Story 1. At family dinner, my brother scoffed like he'd just solved world hunger. Some people just have to feel needed, even when they're clearly not. He snorted, so smug you'd think he paid his own rent. Everyone looked at me. I raised my glass and said, "Good news." Then I'm not. Then I pulled out my phone, opened the banking app, and froze the account that was quietly funding his life. 5 minutes later, he was pale, stammering like a kid who lost his lunch money. My mom whispered, "What did you just do?" Hey Reddit, long-time lurker, first-time poster. This happened over the past year, and I'm finally ready to share, because holy crap, did karma deliver in spectacular fashion. Fair warning, this is long, but I promise it's worth it. Also changed some details for privacy, but the core story is 100% real. I've been debating whether to post this for months, but after reading so many stories on here about entitled family members getting their comeuppance, I figured you guys would appreciate this one. It's got everything: freeloading relatives, fake entrepreneurs, systematic revenge, and a very satisfying ending where the bad guys get exactly what they deserve. Some background first, because context matters. I 32, male busted my rear end to get where I am. Grew up poor in a Rust Belt town where half the factories closed before I graduated high school. Dad worked double shifts as a machinist. Mom cleaned offices at night just to keep food on the table. I was the nerdy kid who actually cared about grades while everyone else was getting high behind the gym. Spent 4 years eating ramen noodles and studying to get my construction management degree, then worked my way up from assistant project coordinator to running million-dollar commercial builds. No family money, no connections, just grinding it out every single day. Now I make $89,000 a year managing construction projects for a regional firm. Not rich by any means, but comfortable. Drive a paid-off pickup truck, own a decent house, and have about $75,000 in savings because I'm actually responsible with money. My brother Danny? Complete opposite story. Danny's 3 years older, but acts like he's still in high school. Peaked as quarterback on our terrible team, and has been chasing that glory ever since. Never went to college, bounced between construction jobs and warehouse work, then met Jessica 5 years ago. Jessica is everything wrong with entitled people rolled into one perfectly fake package. Hair extensions that cost more than most people's car payments, nails so long she can't do actual work, Instagram full of entrepreneur and boss babe nonsense despite never holding a real job. She sunk her claws into Danny when he was making decent money at a tire shop. Within 6 months, convinced him he was too good for manual labor and should start his own business. What business? She'd figure it out later. That started the entrepreneur phase. First, a lawn care service that failed because Jessica refused to do physical work and Danny couldn't handle it alone. They bought a $3,000 commercial mower on credit, printed business cards, and Jessica made an Instagram page for Thompson Lawn Solutions. She was supposed to handle marketing and customer service while Danny did the actual work. Turns out marketing meant posting aesthetic photos of perfectly manicured lawns that weren't even theirs, and customer service meant getting annoyed when clients called during her yoga classes. The business lasted 3 months before they realized Danny couldn't physically handle 15 lawns by himself, especially when Jessica refused to even answer the phone. Then car flipping, which failed because neither knew anything about cars. Danny would buy damaged vehicles from auctions, thinking he could fix them up and resell for profit. Problem was, he's not a mechanic, and Jessica's idea of helping was picking paint colors. They lost about $8,000 on 3 cars that ended up costing more to repair than they were worth. Then some protein powder pyramid scheme that collapsed because, well, it was a pyramid scheme. Jessica was convinced she could build a team of other girls selling supplements through social media. She spent $2,000 on initial inventory and managed to sell exactly 12 containers, mostly to family members who felt sorry for her. Every failure was someone else's fault. Bad customers, wrong timing, unfair competition. Never once did they look in the mirror and think maybe they were the problem. About 11 months ago, Danny called me sobbing like a child. Not upset. Literally crying with that ugly, snotty crying that makes it hard to understand what someone's saying. Said they were getting evicted and didn't know what to do. This was the first I'd heard they were even behind on rent. Turns out they'd been living beyond their means for months. Their rent was $1,850 monthly for a 2-bedroom apartment in the trendy part of town, with exposed brick walls, granite countertops, and a fitness center. Way nicer than anything they could afford. But Jessica insisted they deserved it for her brand image and couldn't be seen living somewhere cheap. Image was everything to her. She'd rather be broke in a nice apartment than comfortable in a modest one. They were 3 months behind, over $5,500 in the hole. The landlord had already filed eviction papers, and they had less than a week to pay up or get out. Danny had been hiding the notices from Jessica, hoping he could figure something out before she found out. Meanwhile, Jessica was still posting Instagram stories about their blessed life, an amazing home like nothing was wrong. "Just this once, bro," Danny begged through the tears. "Just until I get back on my feet. I've got some opportunities lined up. There's this manager position at a sporting goods store, and Jessica's got a lead on some social media work." The opportunities turned out to be a part-time Best Buy job he quit after 2 weeks because Jessica said retail was beneath them. I should have said no. Should have told him to downsize like every other adult. But he played the family card, and I'm apparently an idiot who thought blood meant something. So I started paying their rent. Every month. $1,850 straight from my savings while they lived in luxury, and Jessica posted Instagram stories about her blessed life and amazing boyfriend who provides for her. Not once did either say thank you. Danny would text, "Got it," when payments went through like I owed him money. Jessica acted like I didn't exist unless she needed something else. And there was always something else. Groceries because they were tight this week. Car repairs when Danny's truck broke down. Emergency vet bills for their designer dog. Always presented as crises with implied threats that they'd be homeless if I didn't help. 11 months of this. 11 months of subsidizing two grown adults too proud to work, but not too proud to take my money. Around month 8, Jessica decided my generosity needed conditions attached. What started as occasional comments became regular critiques of my lifestyle and spending habits. Started with passive-aggressive observations about how I must be doing really well financially to afford helping them so much. Then suggestions about how I could optimize my budget to provide even more assistance. She'd make comments about my truck payments, my mortgage, my grocery shopping, like she was conducting a financial audit of my life to see where I could cut corners to give them more money. "You eat out a lot for a single guy," she'd say, while scrolling through my Facebook photos. "If you meal prepped like me, you could probably save $300 a month. That would really help with our utilities." Or, "Do you really need that big house all to yourself? You could get a smaller place and use the difference to help family." The audacity was breathtaking. This woman who hadn't contributed a dime to household expenses in almost a year was critiquing my financial choices and suggesting ways I could sacrifice more to support her lifestyle. One day, I'm dropping off groceries I'd bought them. Organic produce, premium meats, expensive snacks that Jessica had specifically requested, and she gives me grief about my truck. "You know, if you got something more fuel efficient, you'd save enough on gas to help with our utilities too," she says, not even looking up from her phone where she's editing selfies with some filter that makes her look like a completely different person. I just stared at her. This woman who hadn't paid for anything in 8 months, who was currently eating food I'd purchased, living in an apartment I was paying for, was giving me financial advice about my vehicle. "I like my truck," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "I'm just saying, if you really wanted to help family, you'd make sacrifices too." "We're all struggling here," she replied, finally looking up from her phone with this condescending expression, like she was explaining basic math to a child. "All struggling. We're all struggling." This from someone who'd spent $200 on her nails that same week. Money they didn't have. Money that should have gone to bills I wasn't already covering. But somehow we were all in this together, all making equal sacrifices. The worst part? Danny sat there on the couch nodding along like she made perfect sense. Not defending me, not pointing out the obvious hypocrisy, just agreeing that I should sacrifice more of my own lifestyle to better support theirs. Then came the business opportunity. Danny calls all excited about some crypto trading scheme from a YouTube video. Needs $5,000 to get started and promises to pay everything back in 6 months. "Think of it as investing in our future," he says. Jessica's really good with numbers. Jessica. Good with numbers. The same Jessica who overdrafts buying coffee. I said no. First time I'd ever refused anything they asked. Big mistake. The next day I get this long text message from Jessica. We're talking multiple paragraphs. About how disappointed she was in me. How she thought I was the kind of man who supports family dreams, but was starting to see my true colors. The message was crafted like she'd spent hours writing and rewriting it for maximum emotional impact. She questioned my motives for helping them in the first place, suggesting that maybe I only did it to feel superior or maintain control over their lives. She accused me of sabotaging Danny's growth and holding back his potential by not believing in his ideas. The message ended with her saying she was reevaluating what kind of relationship we have and whether I was really family or just someone who helps when it's convenient. Then she started posting passive-aggressive content on social media about fake family members and people who act generous but have strings attached. Never mention names, but the timing was obvious, and anyone who knew our situation understood exactly who she meant. Posts like, "It's amazing how some people will help you just enough to feel good about themselves, but not enough to actually make a difference in your life." And, "You really find out who your real family is when you need support to chase your dreams." Some people want to keep you small because your success threatens them. This went on for weeks. Every few days, another post about loyalty, about conditional love, about people who help with one hand and hold you back with the other. Jessica making little comments during family gatherings about how some people only help when it's convenient for them. Danny acting like I was being unreasonable for not funding their latest get-rich-quick scheme. Final straw came when they asked me to co-sign a $45,000 loan for a brand new BMW because Jessica needed reliable transportation, and their Honda wasn't professional enough for her networking events. When I said absolutely not, Jessica lost it. "You're just jealous," she screamed. "You're jealous that Danny has someone who believes in him while you're alone in that house." She wasn't wrong about me being alone. I'd been single about a year, partly from working so much, partly from spending free time dealing with their financial emergencies. "You want to keep us dependent," she continued. "You like feeling superior. Well, guess what? We don't need your charity anymore." The opportunities turned out to be Danny delivering food, which he quit after a week because Jessica said it was embarrassing. That conversation changed everything. I started seeing how they really viewed me. Not as family helping family, but as some pathetic sucker they could manipulate for money. Once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. After the BMW incident, I realized I needed to document everything. These parasites had gotten too comfortable, and Jessica was getting bolder with her disrespect. First, I started tracking every payment, every emergency, every promise to pay me back. Made a spreadsheet with dates, amounts, and justifications. 11 months of data showed I'd given them over $24,000 total. Rent, groceries, car repairs, vet bills, everything. More importantly, I started monitoring their social media. Holy crap, was that eye-opening. While I'm working 50-hour weeks to afford their lifestyle, Jessica's posting stories about expensive restaurants, shopping hauls, and spa days with equally useless friends. Danny's LinkedIn was full of entrepreneur mindset posts and motivational quotes despite never applying for jobs. Most infuriating? Jessica started an Instagram called Building Our Empire, documenting their journey of creating wealth and financial freedom. Not one mention of who funded this empire. She had hundreds of followers eating up her fake content, giving advice on investment strategies and passive income. These people thought she was some financial guru when she couldn't balance a checkbook. Through her posts, I learned about their real expenses. 300 brunches, 150 Target trips, 80 candles from boutique stores. They spent like millionaires while I covered basic living costs. That's when I started testing them. Told Danny I was having cash flow issues and needed to reduce rent help to $1,200 instead of full $1,850, just to see their reaction. Response was immediate and exactly what I expected. Jessica posted Instagram stories about fair weather friends and people who abandon you when things get tough. Danny called acting hurt about me changing the deal. "We've been counting on this, bro," he said. "You can't just pull the rug out." Counting on it. Like it was their salary instead of my charity. Beautiful part? Instead of cutting spending to make up the $650 difference, they doubled down. Went out for Jessica's birthday at some steakhouse that weekend. Posted pictures of $40 cocktails and $200 dinner tabs. They were so used to my money-solving problems they couldn't comprehend budgeting. That's when I knew they needed complete destruction. Not just cutting off. Total annihilation. Because people like this don't learn from consequences. They find new victims. I started making calls. My buddy who works property management gave insight into eviction proceedings. My cousin at the county explained business license requirements. My neighbor who's a retired cop taught me about debt collection laws. I was building a toolkit. But the real breakthrough came when I was at their place discussing money situation, and Jessica stepped out for nails. Danny started venting about stress, how nothing worked out, how he felt like a failure. For a moment, I almost felt bad. Then he said something that changed everything. "Sometimes I think you like keeping us struggling, you know? Like it makes you feel important." This guy, this absolute piece of garbage who'd been living off my generosity for almost a year, was suggesting I was manipulating them by not giving enough money. That's when I realized Danny wasn't Jessica's victim. He was equally entitled and delusional. He genuinely believed I owed them support, and any limitations were me being controlling. The victim act was manipulation too. That night, I decided I wasn't just cutting them off. I was ensuring they fell so hard they'd never recover, and I was going to enjoy every minute of it. The moment I decided to completely destroy them came at Dad's 60th birthday party. Dad specifically wanted something low-key. Family, burgers on the grill, simple stuff. Jessica couldn't just show up and be normal. She walked in wearing some designer dress that probably cost more than Dad's birthday budget. Carrying expensive wine, she made sure everyone noticed. Danny got Dad a Home Depot gift card, which was actually thoughtful since Dad loves projects. But Jessica had to make a speech. "I want everyone to know how grateful Danny and I are for such supportive family," she announced, standing up mid-dinner like anyone asked. "Especially Mike, who's been amazing helping us get our business off the ground." Business. She called their non-existent income a business. It's rare finding people who understand the entrepreneurial journey and invest in family dreams, she continued, looking at me with this fake smile. My face got hot. She was making it sound like I was a business partner instead of their personal bank. Worse, she was doing this in front of my parents, who didn't know the full extent of what I'd been paying. But she wasn't done. Danny's been working so hard on his cryptocurrency portfolio, and I've been developing our social media presence. We're really building something special. Cryptocurrency portfolio. Social media presence. Her words for gambling with money they don't have, and posting selfies on Instagram. Mom looked confused. "I thought you were looking for regular work, Danny." "Well, Mom, the traditional job market isn't where opportunities are anymore," Danny said, falling into Jessica's nonsense. "We're focused on creating multiple income streams and building long-term wealth." Dad, who worked 30 years in a factory to support his family, just stared. "What exactly do you do all day?" he asked. Jessica laughed condescendingly. "It's complicated, Mr. Thompson. The digital economy requires different work ethic. It's about working smarter, not harder. Working smarter, not harder." To a man who'd done physical labor 3 decades. Table went quiet. Mom looked embarrassed. Dad looked angry. Danny sat there nodding like Jessica was dropping wisdom. That's when Jessica made her fatal mistake. "I mean, some people are content with old ways," she said, glancing at Dad. "But Danny and I are building something bigger. We're not settling for paycheck-to-paycheck living. Paycheck-to-paycheck living." She said this to my parents, who'd worked their entire lives to give us everything. Dad's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. "Excuse me?" "I think it's important having vision," Jessica said, not reading the room. "Thinking beyond trading time for money." "You mean like having an actual job?" Dad asked. "Well, jobs are fine for some people," Jessica said with that condescending tone. "But we're entrepreneurs. We create value instead of just doing what we're told." Silence was deafening. Mom stood up clearing plates, which she does when trying not to say something she'll regret. Dad stared at Jessica like she was an alien. Danny kept nodding along like she made perfect sense. "Besides," Jessica continued, apparently unable to recognize when to shut up, "we're lucky having family support during growth phase. Mike understands that investment in us is really investment in the family's future." That's when I snapped. "What investment?" I asked. Jessica looked confused. "Well, you know, the support you've been giving while we build our—" "You mean the rent money I pay because you're both too lazy to get jobs?" Whole table froze. "I wouldn't call it lazy," Jessica said defensively. "We're working toward—" "What exactly are you working toward, Jessica? Because for 11 months, I've paid your bills while you post Instagram stories about being an entrepreneur. What business do you actually have?" "Well, we're in development phase of—" "You don't have a business. You don't have income. You don't have a plan. You have my money and an Instagram account." Danny finally spoke. "Come on, bro, don't do this here." "Don't do what? Tell the truth? You want truth, Dad? I've paid $1,850 monthly for their rent because Danny can't keep a Best Buy job and Jessica thinks she's too good to work anywhere." Mom stopped in kitchen doorway. Dad's face went red. 11 months, I continued. Over 24 grand. Instead of saying thank you or getting their act together, they asked me to co-sign car loans and give attitude about not helping enough. Jessica's fake composure cracked. "That's not fair, Mike. We never asked you to—" "Nonsense. You've asked for everything. Rent, food, car repairs, vet bills. Every time I help, you act like I'm not doing enough. We're grateful, but—" "Grateful? You posted on Instagram last week about fake family members who help with strings attached. But was that gratitude?" She turned bright red. "And you," I said to Danny. "You told me I like keeping you struggling because it makes me feel important. Does that sound grateful?" Dad slammed his hand on table. "Are you serious? Mike's been paying your rent and you're complaining. It's complicated, Dad, Danny said weakly. No, it's not, Dad shot back. Your brother works his tail off at a real job to pay for your apartment while you sit around pretending to be a businessman. What's complicated about that? Jessica started fake crying. I don't understand why everyone's being so mean. We're trying our best. Your best? Mom said from kitchen. Your best is taking money from your brother while insulting his father? That's when I stood up. You know what? You're right, Jessica. I am done helping with strings attached. The string is showing basic respect and gratitude. Since you can't do that, we're done. I pulled out my phone, opened banking app, and canceled the recurring payment right there. 11 months of my money, and you can't even pretend to be thankful. Figure it out yourselves. Jessica started sobbing. Danny looked like someone punched him. Mike, wait, let's talk, Danny said. Nope, we're done talking. You've got until month's end to figure out your own rent. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. This is going to destroy us, Jessica wailed. I turned back one last time. Good. First week after cutting them off was beautiful. Radio silence from both. No angry texts, no guilt trips, no emergency calls. Just pure, blissful quiet. I figured they were either finding another sucker or still convinced I was bluffing. Either way, I enjoyed the peace. But their social media told a different story. Jessica's Instagram went from daily entrepreneur lifestyle content to sporadic, desperate, manifesting abundance garbage. Danny stopped posting motivational LinkedIn quotes and went completely dark. By week 2, panic set in. Danny called Tuesday night, trying to sound casual. Hey bro, just checking in. How are things? Good. You? Yeah, good. Listen, I know you were upset at Dad's party and I get it. Maybe we could grab coffee and talk things through. Nothing to talk through. You made clear how you feel about my help. Come on, man. You know we appreciate everything you've done. Do I? Because Jessica spent Dad's birthday explaining how paycheck to paycheck living is for losers who lack vision. That sound appreciative. Long pause. She didn't mean it like that. How did she mean it, Danny? Another pause. Look, can we just work something out? Just until what? Until you find another family member to leech off? That's not fair. What's not fair is me paying your bills 11 months while you insult my work ethic and family. Figure it out yourself. I hung up. Next day, Jessica tried a different approach. Showed up at my work parking lot after my shift, clearly been crying. Mascara streaked, red eyes, the whole production. Mike, we need to talk, she said. No, we don't. Please. I know I said things that came out wrong, but you're misunderstanding the situation. Am I? Yes. I never meant disrespecting your parents. I was explaining our business model and it came out wrong. What business model, Jessica? Explain it. She started stammering about building their brand and developing revenue streams, but couldn't give one concrete income example. So your business model is taking my money while posting on Instagram? It's more complicated than that. No, it's really not. You want me paying bills so you can play pretend entrepreneur. When I ask for basic gratitude, you act like I'm controlling. I am grateful. We both are. Then why did you post about fake family members with strings attached? That wasn't about you. Who else was it about? She couldn't answer. Jessica, here's the thing. You and Danny spent 11 months treating me like a bank account instead of family. Now you're dealing with consequences. It stinks, but that's life. But the apartment is your problem. You signed the lease? We can't afford it without your help. Then you should have thought about that before biting the hand that feeds you. I got in my truck and drove away, leaving her standing there. By week 3, real desperation kicked in. Danny started calling daily. When I stopped answering, he moved to texts. Long, rambling messages about how sorry he was, how Jessica influenced his thinking, how he knew he'd messed up. But here's the beautiful part. He started applying for jobs. My buddy who works property management called me laughing. Dude, some guy named Danny Thompson just applied for maintenance at one of our complexes. Says he's your brother and needs work immediately. Should I hire him? Up to you, I said. But don't do me favors. Treat him like any other applicant. Oh, I will. But get this. He listed cryptocurrency trading and social media management as recent work experience. I almost choked. Meanwhile, Jessica's Instagram stories became increasingly unhinged. Posts about financial setbacks being tests from universe and removing toxic people from your life. She started a GoFundMe for their housing crisis that raised exactly $47 from 3 people. Best part was watching her spin their situation as spiritual journey. Sometimes the universe removes false support to help find true strength, she posted over a picture of herself crying in their car. false support. My $24,000 was false support. Real karma came when one of Jessica's boss babe friends started commenting asking for business specifics. When Jessica couldn't provide details, the friend called her out publicly. Wait, so you've been posting about being an entrepreneur, but don't actually have a business? And your boyfriend's brother was paying your rent? Girl, that's not entrepreneurship. That's being a sugar baby with extra steps. Jessica deleted the comment and went private, but screenshots live forever. By month's end, Danny had taken the maintenance job, $12 hourly fixing toilets and unclogging drains. Far cry from his entrepreneur phase, but honest work. Jessica was forced to move back with her parents after eviction. Apparently, her dad had choice words about her business model when he found out what really happened. But I wasn't done. Not even close. 3 months into their new reality, I thought Danny was starting to figure things out. He'd kept the maintenance job, stopped posting nonsense online, seemed to be accepting that actual work was required to pay bills. I was wrong. Wake-up call came when my cousin mentioned seeing Danny at a casino Saturday night. Not just there, but at poker tables with what looked like several $100s in chips. This while supposedly broke and struggling to rebuild. I did some digging and found Danny had gotten a credit card and was using it for investment opportunities, which apparently meant gambling and day trading with money he didn't have. Jessica, meanwhile, had started a new Instagram from her parents' house, calling herself a mindset coach and selling $50 PDFs about overcoming financial trauma. The irony was incredible. They hadn't learned anything, just found new ways to avoid real responsibility. That's when I decided to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. First, I called my buddy and told him what Danny was doing with paychecks. My buddy, being a good manager, had a conversation with Danny about financial responsibility. When Danny got defensive saying it wasn't his business what he did with money, my buddy fired him on the spot. Can't have someone working maintenance who makes poor money decisions, my buddy told me later. What if he steals from tenants or gets desperate? Next, I reached out to Jessica's dad through a mutual acquaintance. Turned out he didn't know about her mindset coaching business, or that she was scamming people online. When he found out his daughter was running fake business schemes from his house, he kicked her out. But the real masterpiece was what I did with their debt. During those 11 months when I paid their rent, Danny and Jessica had racked up about $16,000 in credit card debt. They'd hidden it from me, obviously, but financial records are surprisingly accessible when you know where to look. I bought their debt. Through a debt collection company my neighbor connected me with, I purchased their outstanding credit card debt for about 30 cents on the dollar. Completely legal, and suddenly I owned their financial future. First notice they got was a letter informing them that their debt had been transferred to Thompson Recovery Services. They probably didn't notice the last name initially, but when they missed their first payment, inevitable since Danny had just lost his job, they got a call from me. Hello, this is Mike Thompson from Thompson Recovery Services. I'm calling about your outstanding debt in the amount of $16,247.83. Silence on Danny's end was beautiful. Mike? What the heck is this? This is a debt collection call, Danny. You owe money, and I bought your debt. Completely legal. You can't be serious. Dead serious. You've got 30 days to pay in full, or we'll proceed with legal action. This is insane! You're my brother! Correction. I was your brother. You and Jessica made clear that family doesn't matter when money's involved. So now we're just debtor and creditor. What made it better was that I had every legal right to pursue aggressive collection. Phone calls, letters, wage garnishment if Danny found another job. I could make their lives absolutely miserable, and it was perfectly legitimate. But the real genius move was what I did next. I started posting updates about their situation on Facebook. Just wanted to thank everyone who supported my decision to stop enabling certain family members. For those asking how they're doing, Danny lost his job for gambling with his paycheck, and Jessica got kicked out of her parents' house for running fake business scams. Sometimes tough love works exactly like it's supposed to. I tagged them both. Comments were brutal. People they'd gone to high school with, old co-workers, family friends. Everyone started sharing their own stories about Danny and Jessica's entitled behavior over the years. Turned out I wasn't the only one they'd treated badly. Danny's former boss commented about how he'd quit his tire shop job by just not showing up. One of Jessica's old friends shared screenshots of her asking for money for emergencies that turned out to be shopping trips. Post got shared 47 times. In our small town, that might as well have been viral. Within a week, Danny couldn't go anywhere without people knowing exactly what kind of person he was. Grocery store, gas station, even unemployment office. Everyone knew he was the loser who'd burned his own brother. Jessica tried defending herself in comments, which only made things worse. She wrote this long paragraph about family loyalty and private matters, but people roasted her harder. Maybe try getting a job instead of typing essays on Facebook, one person commented. Imagine being 28 years old and getting kicked out of your parents' house for being a scammer, wrote another. But the best comment came from Dad. Sometimes children need to learn that actions have consequences. Better late than never. That's when they finally broke. The calls started Wednesday night, 7 months after I'd cut them off. Not angry calls this time, desperate ones. Danny first. Mike, please, we need to talk. I know I messed up. I know we both messed up, but this has gone too far. His voice was different, smaller, broken. Has it gone too far? Because I remember you saying I liked keeping you struggling to feel important. I was wrong. I was so wrong about everything. Where's Jessica? Gone. She left last week when the debt collection stuff started. Said this was all my fault for not managing family relationships properly. I almost laughed. Even in the end, Jessica couldn't take responsibility. Where are you living? My car. I've been sleeping in my car for 4 days. Good. Where's your entrepreneurial spirit now, Danny? Please don't do this. I'm begging you. I'll do anything. Anything? Anything. I'll get a job, any job. I'll pay you back every penny. I'll work 3 jobs if I have to. Just please help me. But I wasn't done yet. You know what's funny, Danny? For 11 months, I paid your bills and asked for nothing except basic respect. And you couldn't even give me that. I know I was a jerk. You were worse than a jerk. You were an ungrateful piece of garbage who bit the hand that fed you. And Jessica? Jessica was a gold-digging user who thought she was too good to work at McDonald's, but not too proud to take my money. You're right. About everything. Now you're homeless, jobless, and your girlfriend left you the second things got hard. How's that working out? Silence except for what sounded like crying. Mike, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You were the best brother anyone could ask for, and I threw it away because I'm a selfish idiot. The crying was definitely real now. I miss you, man. I miss having a brother. I miss having family. I know I don't deserve it, but please, I'm drowning here. That's when I delivered the final blow. You want to know the really messed up part, Danny? I could fix all of this today. I could pay off your debt, get you an apartment, help you find a decent job. I've got the money and connections. Please. But I'm not going to. You know why? Why? Because you need to learn that actions have consequences. For 11 months, you treated me like garbage while I supported your worthless life. Now you get to see what life looks like without me. Mike, please, I'll do anything. I'll grovel. I'll apologize publicly. I'll work for you for free. Whatever you want. I don't want anything from you, Danny. That's the point. You burned that bridge so completely that there's nothing left to rebuild. You're my brother. No, I was your brother. You made clear that family only mattered when you needed something. So now you're just some loser who owes me money. The sobbing got heavier. I can't do this anymore, Mike. I can't live like this. Then don't. Get a job. Any job. Work your way back up from the bottom like everyone else has to do. Figure out how to be a functioning adult instead of a parasite. What if I can't? Then you'll fail. And that'll be entirely your fault. I hung up and blocked his number. But the story doesn't end there. 2 weeks later, I got a call from Dad. Danny had shown up at his house, cleaned up and wearing a McDonald's uniform. He got a job, Dad said. Asked if he could stay in the basement until he saves up for apartment deposit. Says he wants to prove he can change. What did you tell him? I told him he could stay. But any nonsense and he's out. No second chances. Think he'll stick with it? We'll see. But Mike, what you did was harsh. It was necessary. Maybe, but he's still your brother. He stopped being my brother when he chose Jessica, and easy money over family loyalty. This is just him dealing with consequences of that choice. Dad was quiet for a minute. Fair enough. But if he does turn his life around, you might want to think about forgiveness. We'll see. 4 months later, Danny's still at McDonald's. Still living in Dad's basement. Still working his tail off to rebuild his life from nothing. Jessica? Last I heard, she married some 50-year-old divorced guy she met on a sugar daddy website. Guess she found her target market. Story 2. This story is titled, My Brother Slept with My Wife, Then My Parents Asked Me to Be His Best Man at Their Wedding, but Karma Hit Harder Than They Expected. Hey everyone! Before we jump into today's video, I need your help. We've noticed the channel is losing some traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can support us. It's quick, free, and it helps us keep bringing you awesome content. Your support means the world. Let's keep this channel growing together. Thanks so much. Now let's start the video. 36 male, never thought I'd be typing this out. But here we are. Sorry in advance for the wall of text, but I need to get this off my chest, and maybe hearing from other people who've been through similar hell will help. Or maybe this will help someone else. Who knows? This nightmare started 3 years ago when I was still married to Sarah. We'd been together since sophomore year of college, nearly 12 years total before everything imploded. I always thought we had something solid. We survived the post-college broke phase, my medical school debt, her career changes, and even a miscarriage that nearly broke us. But apparently, we couldn't survive my own damn brother. To understand this clusterfuck, I need to explain my family dynamic. I'm the oldest with a younger brother, Jake, 33 male. Since we were kids, Jake was the golden child who could do no wrong. My parents, especially my dad, treated him like he was God's gift to humanity. I was the responsible one who worked my ass off for every scrap of recognition, while Jake coasted through life on charm and my parents' checkbook. Example: when I graduated med school and landed a residency at a prestigious hospital after working 80-hour weeks and drowning in $280,000 of student loans, my parents sent a generic congrats text. When Jake finally finished his business degree after 6 years of partying and C averages, they threw him a massive graduation party and bought him a fucking BMW. A brand new BMW. For graduating with a 2.4 GPA. This was the pattern my entire life. When I bought my first house, entirely with my own money, my parents came over, criticized the neighborhood, and asked why I didn't get something nicer. 2 months later, they co-signed for Jake's condo in the trendy part of town and paid his down payment. Despite all this, I tried to maintain a relationship with Jake. He's my brother, and I stupidly thought blood meant something. Maybe that's why I was blind to what was happening right under my nose. I remember one Thanksgiving. I'd just finished a 36-hour shift at the hospital and was exhausted. Jake showed up 2 hours late to dinner with some lame excuse about traffic. Instead of calling him out, my mom kept his food warm and fussed over him when he arrived. Meanwhile, she'd criticized me earlier for looking unprofessional because I hadn't had time to shave that morning after saving 3 lives in the ER. The favoritism was so obvious that even extended family noticed. My cousin Maria once pulled me aside at a family reunion and said, "It's like you're invisible when Jake's in the room." She wasn't wrong. At my grandfather's funeral, my eulogy, I was the only grandchild who'd gone into medicine like him, was cut short because we're running behind schedule. But they gave Jake 10 minutes to ramble about 2 fishing trips he'd taken with Grandpa. When I met Sarah in college, I felt like I finally had something that was completely mine. She was smart as hell, ambitious, and had this infectious laugh that could light up a room. We clicked immediately. She was getting her degree in marketing, and I was pre-med. We were both driven and understood the late nights of studying. By senior year, we were living together in a crappy apartment off campus, splitting ramen and dreaming about our future. I remember our first apartment had this terrible leak in the bathroom ceiling. We couldn't afford to move, so we created this elaborate system of plastic sheeting and buckets that we had to empty multiple times a day. Instead of complaining, Sarah turned it into a game. Whoever emptied the most buckets in a week got to pick the movie for date night. That's the kind of person she was. Or at least, the kind of person I thought she was. My parents weren't thrilled when I brought Sarah home the first time. She came from a working-class family. Her dad was a plumber, her mom a school secretary, and my mom especially made these little comments about her clothes or her accent. Sarah grew up in rural Pennsylvania. Looking back, I think they always expected me to marry someone from our social circle, aka someone with money and connections. Classic elitist bullshit. We got married when I was 28 and Sarah was 26, after I'd finished med school and was starting my residency. We had a modest wedding because we were paying for it ourselves. My parents contributed exactly $500, which my mom made sure to mention in her wedding speech. We would have loved to do more, but we're saving for Jake's future. Meanwhile, they'd already told us they were setting aside $75,000 for Jake's future wedding, even though he was single and hooking up with a different girl every weekend. At our wedding reception, my dad gave a toast that spent more time talking about Jake's recent job offer than about Sarah and me. And while we're celebrating Rob finding his match, we're also proud to announce Jake has been accepted at Merrill Lynch with a starting bonus that's quite impressive for someone his age. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table, and I remember thinking how lucky I was to have someone who understood what I dealt with. For the first 5 years of our marriage, things were good despite the challenges. I was working crazy hours as a resident and then as a new attending physician in emergency medicine. Sarah had built a solid career in digital marketing, working her way up to management. We finally bought our house, a modest 4-bedroom in a nice neighborhood with good schools. We were talking about trying for a baby again, after the heartbreak of our miscarriage 2 years earlier. We had routines that kept us connected despite my chaotic schedule. Sunday mornings were sacred. No matter what, we'd make breakfast together and go for a walk in the park near our house. We had a standing date night every other Wednesday. When I worked night shifts, she'd leave me little notes in my lunch container with jokes or encouragement. I thought we were solid, unbreakable. That's when Jake started showing up. A lot. At first, it seemed innocent. Jake's new apartment was, coincidentally, only 15 minutes from our house, even though it was 40 minutes from his job. He started dropping by unannounced, always when I was working night shifts at the hospital. He'd bring dinner for Sarah or offer to help with stuff around the house. I actually thanked him for checking in on Sarah when I was working those 24-hour shifts. What a fucking idiot I was. Looking back, there were so many red flags. Sarah started dressing differently, wearing more makeup even on weekends. She was constantly on her phone and would take calls in the other room. She set up a password on her phone for the first time in our relationship, claiming it was for work security. Our sex life, which had always been great, became almost non-existent. She was tired, or had a headache, or was stressed about work. I noticed she'd started buying new underwear. Nothing outrageous, but different from her usual style. When I commented on it, she said her friend Lisa had recommended a new brand that was more comfortable. I believed her. She stopped sharing details about her day. Before, she'd tell me about work drama or something funny that happened at lunch. Now when I asked about her day, she'd just say, fine, or busy, and change the subject. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd get defensive and say I was overthinking things. I chalked it up to both of us being busy and stressed. I was working 60-plus hours a week at the hospital, and she had just taken on bigger responsibilities at her company. Plus, we were actively trying to get pregnant again, which added its own pressure. I never suspected Jake. Never. He was my brother, for fuck's sake. The way I found out wasn't some dramatic confrontation or catching them in bed. It was stupid, ordinary, and devastating all at once. It was our anniversary, and I had switched shifts with a colleague so I could surprise Sarah. I left work early, bought her favorite flowers, sunflowers, and champagne, and headed home around 2 p.m. when she thought I'd be at the hospital until midnight. When I pulled onto our street, I noticed Jake's Beamer in our driveway. I thought nothing of it at first. Maybe he was dropping something off. But then I realized Sarah's car was in the garage, meaning she had called in sick to work or was working from home. Still, my idiot brain didn't connect the dots. I thought maybe she wasn't feeling well and Jake brought her soup or something. I was even going to thank him for being so thoughtful. I entered through the garage using my code, wanting to surprise Sarah. The house was quiet, but I heard faint music coming from upstairs. I went up slowly, flowers and champagne still in hand, thinking I'd surprise her in her home office. The bedroom door was partially open, and there they were. I didn't walk in on them having sex. Somehow, what I saw was worse. They were lying in our bed, the bed I'd paid for, in the house I mostly paid for. Jake was in his boxers with his arm around Sarah, who was wearing just a t-shirt. My fucking t-shirt from medical school. They were drinking wine and laughing at something on her phone, looking so comfortable, so intimate, like a real couple. I stood there for what felt like forever, just watching them through the crack in the door. They hadn't noticed me. They looked happy, genuinely happy in a way Sarah and I hadn't been in months. That's what gutted me most in that moment. Finally, I pushed the door open. The look on their faces, shock, guilt, and then this flash of annoyance at being caught, I'll never forget it. Sarah scrambled to cover herself, while Jake just sat there, not even trying to move. How long, was all I could say. Sarah started crying, but Jake actually smirked. Smirked. At me. In my house. In my bed. With my wife. Come on, bro, he said, like we were discussing a baseball game or something trivial. These things happen. I don't remember dropping the champagne bottle, but I remember it shattering on our hardwood floor. The flowers fell next. Sarah was saying something, crying, but all I could focus on was Jake's smug face. Rob, please let me explain, Sarah was saying. It's not what you think. Not what I think? I finally found my voice. You're half naked in bed with my brother on our anniversary, and it's not what I think? What followed was a blur of shouting, crying, and pathetic excuses. Apparently, they'd been sleeping together for almost 7 months. 7 months. Almost the entire time Jake had been stopping by to help. We didn't mean for it to happen, Sarah kept saying. It just did. Jake finally got out of bed and had the audacity to try to put his hand on my shoulder. Look, man, we were going to tell you. We just couldn't find the right time. I shoved his hand away and told them both to get the fuck out of my house. Sarah begged to talk about it rationally, but I was done. I threw Jake's clothes out into the hallway and told him if he wasn't out of my house in 2 minutes, I'd break every bone in his body. He actually looked scared then, probably the first genuine emotion he'd shown. As they scrambled to get dressed and leave, I went downstairs, grabbed a trash bag, and started throwing Sarah's things into it. By the time they came downstairs, I had 3 bags filled with her clothes and was working on a fourth. Rob, please, Sarah was sobbing. Let's just talk. I made a terrible mistake. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary or burning dinner, I said, continuing to stuff her designer clothes into garbage bags. Fucking my brother for 7 months is a choice. A series of choices made every single day. They left with garbage bags full of her stuff, and I changed the locks that same day. The worst part? As I was cleaning up the broken glass from the champagne bottle, I found an anniversary card Sarah had bought for me hidden in her nightstand drawer. It had some generic message about love standing the test of time, and she'd signed it, "Forever yours, Sarah." The fucking audacity. She was planning to give me an anniversary card and then go back to sleeping with my brother the next day. I thought my family would be outraged on my behalf. Shows how delusional I was. The day after I caught them, I got a call from my mother. I was still in shock, hadn't slept, and was debating between trashing all our wedding photos or setting fire to the bedroom furniture. I answered, thinking maybe, just maybe, my mom would offer support. Instead, she started with, "Jacob is very upset." Not, "How are you doing, Rob?" Or, "I'm so sorry this happened." No, her first concern was that precious Jake was upset. "Jake is upset?" I laughed, a hollow sound that scared even me. My wife was fucking my brother. There was a pause, and then my mother said something I'll never forgive her for. "Well, perhaps if you'd been home more instead of always working, Sarah wouldn't have been lonely." That's right. She blamed me for my wife's affair with her son. "And you know," she continued, "Jake and Sarah have a lot in common. They're both so creative and social. You've always been so intense. Maybe this is for the best." I hung up and threw my phone against the wall so hard it shattered. Then I sat on my kitchen floor and cried for the first time since I was a teenager. My dad called the next day on my landline. Yes, I still had one. His approach was slightly different but equally infuriating. "This family drama is bad for business," he said. My father, the successful real estate developer, always concerned with appearances. "We need to resolve this quietly. Jake feels terrible about how you found out, but what's done is done." "How I found out," I repeated. "The problem isn't how I found out. The problem is that my brother was fucking my wife." My dad sighed like I was being a difficult child. "Robert, these things happen in families. The important thing now is to handle this with dignity. No one needs to know the details. We'll say you and Sarah grew apart, and eventually, after a respectful amount of time, she and Jake found comfort in each other." I laughed again, that same scary laugh. "You want to rewrite history to protect Jake's reputation. Typical." "I'm trying to protect all our reputations," my father said sternly, "including yours." "I don't give a shit about my reputation," I told him. "And as far as I'm concerned, I don't have a brother anymore. Or parents, for that matter." I hung up on him too. The next few weeks were a haze of rage and paperwork. I filed for divorce immediately, citing adultery and naming Jake specifically. I knew this would make the divorce public record, potentially embarrassing my status-conscious family. Good. Sarah tried to contact me multiple times, leaving tearful voicemails begging for a chance to explain, as if there was any explanation that could justify what she'd done. I blocked her number. Jake tried once to come to my house, but I met him at the door with a baseball bat and a promise that if he stepped 1 foot on my property, I'd make sure he'd be drinking through a straw for the next 6 months. He backed off quickly. My colleagues at the hospital noticed something was wrong, but I deflected their concerns. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts to stay busy and away from my empty house. On my rare days off, I started boxing at a local gym, taking out my rage on punching bags instead of my brother's face. Then came the email from my mother that pushed me over the edge. The subject line simply read, "The engagement." The email was short and to the point. "Robert, Jacob, and Sarah have decided to make their relationship official. They've become engaged and plan to marry in June at the country club. Your father and I are hosting. We know this is difficult, but Jake has asked that you be his best man. He says despite everything, you're still his brother, and he wants you by his side on his special day. This could be a good opportunity for healing. Family should stick together no matter what. Please call me when you're ready to discuss. Mom." I read it 3 times, convinced it was some kind of sick joke. They'd been officially together for what, 6 weeks? And they were already engaged? And Jake wanted me as his best man? I might have laughed if I wasn't so damn angry. The sheer entitlement, the complete lack of awareness, it was staggering. I printed out the email and taped it to my fridge as a reminder of exactly who my family really was. I didn't respond to the email. Instead, I went to the gym and hit the punching bag until my knuckles bled. The next day, I received a text from Jake. Got the time off for the engagement party next month. Hope you'll be there. We need to bury the hatchet, bro. That's when I decided the high road wasn't working for me anymore. These people, my so-called family, and my cheating ex, weren't just moving on with their lives. They were actively trying to pull me into their narrative, to normalize what they'd done as if it was just some minor disagreement. I finally responded to my mother's email. Let me be crystal clear. I will not be attending any engagement party, wedding, or family function where Jake and Sarah are present. Jake is no longer my brother, and you are no longer my parents if you support this sham of a relationship. Go ahead with your wedding plans. But know that if you do this, you are choosing Jake over me for the last time. My mother's response came within minutes. You're being childish and selfish. This isn't just about you. Jake and Sarah are in love, and Sarah is pregnant. You need to grow up and accept that life doesn't always go as planned. Pregnant. The word hit me like a truck. Sarah was pregnant with my brother's child. Sarah, who had cried in my arms after our miscarriage, promising we'd try again when the time was right. The time was apparently right, just not with me. I remember sitting at my kitchen table staring at that email for what felt like hours. Then something inside me just snapped. Not in a violent way, but in a moment of perfect clarity. These people weren't worth my pain. They weren't worth my rage. They certainly weren't worth my forgiveness. That night, I made a decision. I was done being the bigger person. I was done turning the other cheek. It was time to show my family and Sarah exactly what they'd thrown away. I also decided that day to reach out to a therapist. I was clearly struggling to process everything, and while revenge might feel good in the moment, I needed to make sure I wasn't destroying myself in the process. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made. The therapist helped me see that what I was feeling was normal. The betrayal, the rage, the grief, all of it was a natural response to trauma. She also helped me channel those feelings into more productive outlets than just fantasizing about ruining Jake's life, though I still did plenty of that. I spent the next few months transforming myself and my life. I hired the most ruthless divorce attorney in the city, a woman known for leaving cheating spouses financially devastated. I made sure Sarah knew exactly who was representing me. At work, I accepted a promotion to chief of emergency medicine that I'd previously been hesitant about because it would mean even more hours away from home. Now, that didn't matter anymore. The significant salary bump would be useful for what I had planned. I sold the house, my house that I'd paid 90% of the down payment for. Sarah tried to fight for her fair share in the divorce, but my lawyer had a field day with the evidence of her adultery. In the end, Sarah walked away with far less than she'd hoped. I bought a sleek penthouse downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and views of the city. I hired a personal trainer and started working out 6 days a week, channeling my anger into transforming my body. I traded in my sensible sedan for a Porsche 911, something I'd always wanted but had deemed too impractical when I was married. I also started dating. Nothing serious, just dinner with attractive, successful women. I made sure these dates happened at visible restaurants where mutual friends might spot us. And I was always the perfect gentleman. Charming, attentive, generous. The word got back to Sarah, as I knew it would. One of her friends, Megan, actually reached out to me on Facebook. You look great, Rob. Sarah mentions you sometimes. I think she regrets what happened. I didn't respond, but I made sure to post a photo the next day of me and my date at a concert Sarah and I had planned to attend before everything fell apart. All the while, I was quietly making other moves. I hired a private investigator to look into Jake's business dealings. My brother had recently started his own investment firm, heavily funded by my parents. The PI discovered that Jake was cutting corners, making questionable investments, and possibly misrepresenting returns to clients. I also discovered, through hospital connections, that my dad had been diagnosed with stage 2 prostate cancer but was keeping it quiet. He'd been advised to have surgery but was delaying treatment, likely not wanting to appear weak during Jake and Sarah's engagement festivities. Most importantly, I found out through the hospital grapevine that Sarah had lost the baby. She'd had a miscarriage at 10 weeks. I felt a moment of sympathy for her. I knew firsthand how devastating that could be. But then I remembered how she'd betrayed me, and that sympathy hardened into resolve. 2 weeks before the lavish engagement party my parents had planned at the country club, I received a call from Sarah. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Rob? Her voice was small, hesitant. Please don't hang up. What do you want? I kept my voice neutral. I lost the baby. She started crying. And Jake, he's been different since it happened. Distant. I don't know if he ever really wanted a child or if he was just excited about having something that was his and not yours. I said nothing. Your mom has been awful about it, she continued. She suggested that I failed somehow, that maybe I wasn't taking care of myself properly, as if I wanted this to happen. Still, I remained silent. I know you hate me, she said finally, and you have every right to, but I miss you. I miss what we had. I made the biggest mistake of my life, and I know now what I threw away. Is that all? I asked coldly. No, she whispered. Jake's firm is in trouble. Some clients are threatening to pull out, and your dad is sick but refusing treatment. Everything's falling apart, and I don't know what to do anymore. I waited a beat, then said, Sounds like you made your bed, Sarah. Now you get to lie in it. With my brother. I hung up, my heart pounding. The pieces were falling into place faster than I'd anticipated. It was time to accelerate my plan. The night of the engagement party arrived, a black tie affair at the country club with over 200 guests invited. My parents had spared no expense for their precious Jake and his bride-to-be, despite my father's health issues and Jake's business problems. I wasn't invited, of course, but that didn't mean I couldn't make an appearance. I'd been careful in the preceding weeks. I'd accidentally run into several family friends, expressing my sadness about the upcoming wedding, but insisting I wished them well. Family is family, after all, I'd say, with a sad smile. People ate it up. Poor Rob, so mature despite his brother stealing his wife. The night of the party, I dressed in my best suit, tailored navy, with a crisp white shirt and gold cufflinks that had once belonged to my grandfather. I looked good, better than good. The months of working out and living well had transformed me. I arrived at the country club just as dinner was being served. The maitre d' recognized me. I'd slipped him $500 earlier that week to ensure I wouldn't be stopped. He nodded as I walked past, pretending not to see me. The ballroom was decorated lavishly. White roses everywhere, crystal chandeliers, champagne flowing. I stood at the entrance for a moment, surveying the scene. My parents were at the head table with Jake and Sarah. My father looked thin, his face gaunt despite his forced smile. My mother was animated, playing the perfect hostess. Jake looked stressed, constantly checking his phone. And Sarah? Sarah looked miserable in her designer dress, forcing smiles for photos. I walked in confidently, and it took a few seconds for people to notice me. Then the whispers started, heads turning, conversations stopping mid-sentence. I smiled pleasantly and made my way to the bar, ordering a sparkling water. My mother saw me first. Her face went white. She nudged my father, who looked up and froze. Jake was deep in conversation with someone who looked like a potential investor and didn't notice immediately. Sarah was the last to see me, and when she did, something flickered across her face. Relief? Hope? Panic? All three? I took my drink and walked directly to their table, coming to stand right in front of them. The entire room was watching now, a collective held breath. Robert! My mother hissed. What are you doing here? I smiled warmly. I'm celebrating my brother's engagement, of course. Isn't that what family does? Jake finally noticed me and stood up abruptly. Rob? What the hell, man? Sit down, Jake, I said, still smiling. I'm not here to cause a scene. Just thought I'd offer my congratulations in person. Sarah looked up at me, her eyes wide. Rob, I nodded at her. Sarah, you look lovely. Marriage clearly agrees with you. Oh wait, you're not married yet. Just engaged. To my brother. After cheating on me with him for months. My mistake. My father stood up then, swaying slightly. He looked ill. Robert, this is neither the time nor the place. I disagree, I said pleasantly. This is exactly the time and place. All your friends are here. All your business associates. Everyone who matters to this family, right? So they should all know the truth. I turned to address the room, raising my glass. A toast to the happy couple. To my brother Jake, who fucked my wife behind my back for 7 months before I caught them in my bed. And to Sarah, my cheating ex-wife, who's apparently worked her way up in the family. I hope you'll all join me in congratulating them on finding true love through betrayal and deceit. The room went silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Oh, and while we're sharing news, I continued cheerfully, a few other items you might find interesting. My father has cancer but is refusing treatment because appearances matter more than his health. My brother's investment firm is under investigation for fraud. Those promised returns aren't quite what they seem. And the baby they were expecting? Gone. Just like my respect for everyone at this table. Jake lunged at me then, but he was too slow. I sidestepped easily, and he stumbled, knocking over champagne glasses. You bastard, he snarled. You're trying to ruin everything because you're jealous. I laughed, genuinely amused. Jealous? Of what? Your failing business? Your relationship built on betrayal? No, Jake. I'm not jealous. I'm free. I turned to leave, but Sarah grabbed my arm. Rob, please, she whispered urgently. We need to talk. Things aren't. Jake isn't who I thought he was. He's changed. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then back at her face. That's the thing about cheaters and liars, Sarah. They don't just cheat and lie once. It becomes who they are. I gently removed her hand and walked away. Behind me, I could hear my mother's frantic attempts to salvage the situation, my father's labored breathing, Jake's angry denials about his business. But I didn't look back. Outside, the night air was cool and fresh. I handed my ticket to the valet and waited for my Porsche. As I did, guests began streaming out of the ballroom, some looking shocked, others whispering excitedly. Several of my parents' oldest friends nodded at me respectfully as they passed. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Please call me. I made a terrible mistake. I want to fix things. Then another from Jake. You're going to regret this, bro. I swear to God. And finally, one from my mother. Your father collapsed. We're taking him to the hospital. Is this what you wanted? I deleted all three without responding. The next morning, I received a flurry of calls. My father had indeed been taken to the hospital. My hospital. As chief of emergency medicine, I'd been notified immediately, but had delegated his care to another physician. He was stable, but would need the surgery he'd been postponing. Jake's business partners were pulling out left and right, and the SEC was now openly investigating his firm. Sarah had moved out of his apartment, unable to handle the fallout. Over the next few weeks, the begging started. Jake called daily, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails about how sorry he was, how he'd always been jealous of me, how he needed my help with his legal troubles. My mother emailed constantly, switching between guilt trips about my father and pleas for family unity. The most persistent was Sarah. She showed up at my hospital, my gym, even my new penthouse, always with tears and apologies and declarations that she'd made the worst mistake of her life. She'd cut off her long hair, the hair I'd always loved, into a short bob that made her look older and more severe. Her designer clothes had been replaced with simpler outfits. She was trying to be the Sarah I'd fallen in love with in college, but that woman no longer existed for me. One day, she cornered me in the hospital parking garage. Rob, please, just 5 minutes. I've been trying to reach you for weeks. I have nothing to say to you, I told her, walking toward my car. Jake was a mistake, she said, following me. A horrible mistake. He never loved me. He just wanted what you had. As soon as you were out of the picture, he changed. He started staying out late, flirting with other women in front of me. When I lost the baby, he was relieved. He said maybe it was for the best. I stopped and turned to her. And this surprises you? You thought the man who would sleep with his brother's wife behind his back for months would somehow be loyal to you? She flinched. I deserve that. I know I do. But Rob, what we had was real. We can fix this. I know we can. I laughed. There's nothing to fix, Sarah. You destroyed everything. And the worst part? I'm glad you did. Because now I see who you really are. Who my family really is. And I'm better off without all of you. You don't mean that, she said, tears streaming down her face. I know you don't. I've never meant anything more, I said, getting into my car. Don't contact me again. After weeks of their collective harassment, I finally agreed to meet all three of them at a neutral location, a private room at an upscale restaurant downtown. They arrived together, Jake looking haggard in a rumpled suit, my mother thin and anxious, Sarah hovering uncertainly at the edge of the group. Thank you for coming, my mother began. We know you're angry, but we're family. We can work through this. I smiled. I'm not angry anymore. I'm indifferent. There's a difference. Jake leaned forward. Look, Rob, I fucked up. I know that. But I'm drowning here. The SEC is crawling up my ass, investors are suing, and my reputation is shot. I need your help. My help? I raised an eyebrow. What could I possibly do for you? Your friend from college, Tim Matthews. He's with the SEC now. You could talk to him, tell him I made mistakes, but I'm not a criminal. I laughed. But you are a criminal, Jake. Your firm was running a glorified Ponzi scheme. Tim showed me the evidence himself. Jake's face fell. You talked to him already? Of course I did. I'm thorough. My mother clutched her pearls. Robert, please? Your father's health is deteriorating. The stress of all this is killing him. The cancer is killing him, I corrected her. The cancer he could have treated months ago if appearances weren't so important to him. Sarah hadn't spoken yet. She sat staring at her hands. What do you want, Sarah? I asked, making her jump. Why are you even here? She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed. I want another chance. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm asking anyway. These past months have shown me what a horrible mistake I made. You mean the mistake of cheating on me with my brother? Or the mistake of getting caught? Or maybe the mistake of discovering that Jake isn't the perfect golden boy after all? She flinched. All of it. I was I was flattered by Jake's attention. You were working so much, and he was always there, telling me how beautiful I was, how I deserved more attention. Classic predator moves. I nodded. And you fell for it. Yes, she whispered. I did, and I've lost everything because of it. I looked at the three of them, my brother, my mother, my ex-wife, all looking at me with desperation, hoping I'd bail them out, make their problems disappear, just like I'd always done. Here's what I'm going to do, I said finally. Nothing. I'm going to continue living my life, my very good, very successful life, without any of you in it. Jake, you're going to face the consequences of your actions, legal and otherwise. Mom, you're going to take care of Dad and finally confront the reality that your favorite son is a fraud. And Sarah, I looked directly at her. You're going to move on, just not with me. Please, Jake begged, his voice breaking. At least help with Dad. The treatments are expensive, and with my assets frozen, I've already taken care of Dad's medical expenses, I interrupted. But not because of you or Mom. Because despite everything, he's still my father. The bills will be paid, and he'll get the best care. But that doesn't mean I want him or any of you in my life. My mother started crying. Robert, please. We're sorry. We're all so sorry. I know you are, I said, standing up. But here's the thing about sorry. It only counts when you say it because you genuinely regret your actions, not because those actions came with consequences you didn't anticipate. I dropped several $100 bills on the table to cover a meal none of us had eaten. Don't contact me again. Any of you. I've instructed my lawyer, my building security, and my hospital staff accordingly. This is the last time we'll speak. As I walked out, Sarah called after me. Rob, you can't just leave us like this. Please. I turned back one last time. I'm not leaving you. You left me first. I'm just finally accepting it. Outside, my new girlfriend was waiting in my Porsche. A brilliant neurosurgeon who'd never dream of sleeping with my non-existent brother. She smiled as I slid into the driver's seat. How did it go? She asked, squeezing my hand. It's over, I said, feeling lighter than I had in years. Finally, completely over. As we drove away, I caught a glimpse of the three of them in my rearview mirror, standing forlornly on the sidewalk. Then the light changed, and I accelerated forward, leaving them behind for good. Story 3. Your sister deserves it more. You stay home, my dad said, when I surprised him with a luxury Greece trip for his retirement. So I smiled, agreed, and made sure their dream vacation turned into the most humiliating nightmare they'd never forget. Hey Reddit, so I never thought I'd be the guy posting here, but let's just say my family vacation gift turned into something none of us expected. It started as a simple retirement surprise for my dad, but when they decided to replace me with my sister, I figured it was time to teach them what being taken for granted really feels like. Buckle up. This story's got family drama, karma, and the most peaceful coffee I've ever had in my life. I, Mark, 32 male. I work as a physician in San Francisco. I had been planning the Greece trip for 6 months straight. Not for me, but for my dad. The guy was finally retiring after 40 years in construction, and I figured he deserved something big. I wasn't about to buy him a watch or some cliche plaque that says, best dad ever. I wanted him to see the world, the blue rooftops, the Santorini sunsets, the food, the sea breeze, the whole luxury experience. Flights, first class, hotel, cliffside suite with a private pool, tours, private driver, local guide, fine dining reservations, all under my name. The plan was simple. Surprise my parents at the airport, hand them their tickets, and tell them their son had officially one-upped every Hallmark commercial ever made. I got to the San Francisco airport early, holding a little sign that said, "Welcome to your retirement gift." Yeah, a little cheesy, but it felt right. They were flying in from Denver, and I hadn't seen them in person in almost a year. I was honestly excited. Their flight landed, people started pouring out, and then I saw them. Mom in her beige cardigan, Dad walking proud like he still owned every job site he ever worked on. But right behind them came something that made my smile freeze midair. Jessica. They'd just flown in from Denver on Friday afternoon, and the Greece flight was booked for early Saturday morning. The plan was they'd crash at my place overnight before the big send-off. My 37-year-old sister. The same Jessica who still lived in my parents' basement, still figuring things out, still claiming she had back pain from too much gaming. She was rolling a pink suitcase the size of a fridge, waving like this was her celebration. Hey, Mark! Dad called, grinning. Surprise! Yeah, surprise. I forced a smile. What's she doing here? Mom looked anywhere but my face. Jessica smirked and said, Oh, didn't Dad tell you? Dad chuckled like he was announcing something adorable. Your sister needed some fresh air, so she's taking your spot. You don't mind, right? I stared at him, my little welcome sign slowly lowering in my hand. My spot? Yeah, he said, patting my shoulder like it was no big deal. You know how much Jessica's been through lately. We thought this trip would help her recharge. Recharge. The word hit like a bad joke. Jessica spent most days horizontal with a console controller in hand. What exactly was she recharging from? Her Wi-Fi? I smiled, but it wasn't my nice smile. Nice! I didn't realize my gift came with a replace the giver option. Dad laughed again, completely missing the sarcasm. You're always so funny. Funny wasn't what I felt. Inside, it was more like, really? You're doing this again? But I'd learned a long time ago not to show that. You give them an inch of emotion, and they'll twist it into guilt or pity for Jessica. So I stood there, calm and collected, watching as my parents fussed over her like she'd just returned from war. Mom gave me that nervous half smile she always wore during these moments, like she knew it was wrong, but didn't have the spine to stop it. We thought you'd understand, she said softly. You're always so busy with work anyway. Translation, you're successful, so you don't get to have feelings. Jessica yawned and said, Don't be mad, Mark. You wouldn't even enjoy all the walking and sun anyway. I looked at her suitcase, then at her. Right. Wouldn't want to interrupt your busy rest schedule. Her smirk twitched for a second, and that alone gave me mild satisfaction. Dad clapped his hands. Well, let's get moving. Mark, you got the car, right? Of course I did. I'd rented a black SUV for the occasion. The irony of driving them to the luxury trip I paid for wasn't lost on me. Jessica climbed into the front passenger seat without asking, scrolling through her phone like she owned the car. Mom sat in the back, quiet, avoiding eye contact. I wasn't angry in the shouting sense. I'd passed that stage years ago. I was calm, too calm. The kind of calm that comes when you finally decide you're done being the family's safety net. When we pulled into my driveway, Dad stretched his arms and said, You always have the best place, son. You should be proud. I am, I said, especially since I worked for it. He laughed like I'd cracked another joke. As they unloaded their bags, I caught Jessica's phone camera pointed at herself. Leaving for Greece. Can't wait for the beaches, she said to her 4 followers. I stood there, hands in my pockets, watching her post a trip she hadn't earned, with money that wasn't hers, on a vacation that wasn't meant for her. And as stupid as it sounds, I smiled. Because right then, watching her pose in front of my car, I realized something. They might have replaced me for the trip, but I still held all the reservations. And that meant the game wasn't over. Not yet. I unlocked my place and started hauling luggage. It's funny how fast people turn into help-yourself tourists when someone else covers it. I dropped a suitcase in the guest room, another by the bathroom, and tried not to make a face when Jessica tossed a comforter on the living room couch like she'd claimed the best spot. Your place is so cute, Mark, Mom said, doing that obvious nod. So proud of you. Dad clapped me on the shoulder. You did good, son. This will be great for Jessica. Yeah, I said. Glad you think so. I kept my voice light because yelling at 60 isn't productive, and tempting them with a scene would only turn it into more drama. There's a difference between punishment and spectacle. I wanted outcome, not noise. You know Mark did all this, right? Dad said, smiling like he'd built the itinerary himself. Jessica laughed, loud and self-satisfied. He's such a sweet brother. She looked at me like she expected a confetti cannon to explode from my chest. I smiled and went with it. Sarcasm's a fine tool, dull enough that most people don't notice the edge. Yeah, I did the hard part, picking the restaurants with comfortable chairs, I said. Nobody caught the jab. Mom nodded like I'd just complimented the salad. After dinner, I excused myself. I had a late-night meeting with my laptop, which was true in the sense that I was meeting whatever version of justice I could operate from a chair and a Wi-Fi connection. My travel account had been my thing for months. Every confirmation, every payment, every special request was in there under my profile. That was the point. When you're the account holder, you control the strings. And tonight, I plan to cut some. I logged in, the dashboard loading with the soft blue of the travel site I used. The Greece itinerary was right there. Outbound flight, return flight, 3 hotels, 2 private transfers, a winery tour, a local guide for 2 days. All paid. All pretty. My fingers moved with quiet, clinical efficiency. First, the hotels. I clicked into each reservation, cancel, Confirm the system asked about refunds. Certain suppliers had non-refundable rates but would issue partial credits. Fine. I didn't want them refunded. I wanted the illusion. I let some charges stand as credit in my account, so the paperwork would still look real if they glanced at it. For the rest, I canceled outright. Each cancellation generated a line item. Reservation canceled. Confirmation. It felt practical. Next, transfers. Private driver, gone. Tour operator, canceled. I left a few small fees attached, little financial breadcrumbs that would pad the look of legitimacy on the PDFs I'd create later. No fraud, no forged documents, just a lot of administrative clicks from the person in charge. The airline? That was the knife. I'd booked the outbound and return as separate one-ways, so dropping the return was painless. One click, the system asked me to confirm. Are you sure? It said. Like some conscience in code? I hit confirm. When the cancellation showed as processed, I saved screenshots of each cancellation notice. I copied the old booking confirmations too, the ones that still showed the hotel name, the guide's email, the transfer code. Those originals would be perfect as props. People glance at a printout and assume it's the gospel. I planned to give them those props. Then I printed. I formatted the pages so they looked official. Headers, dates, little logos. Nothing forged, just screenshots and old confirmations that would convince anyone in a hurry. I slipped them into a clean white envelope and wrote in a careful hand, "Open when you land." One more touch. In my desk drawer, I found an old, expired company card. Long dead. Nothing active on it. I slipped it into a small leather holder with a note that said, "Backup card if you need it. Treat yourselves." I knew it wouldn't run for a cent, but it looked the part. I didn't want to scam anyone. I just wanted them to feel the sting of expectation, then reality. I tucked the envelope into a drawer where I'd grab it in the morning, checked the locks on the doors, and turned off the living room light. I went to bed with the same steady breathing I'd used to get through late nights at work. Bon voyage, freeloaders, I murmured into the dark. The plan was set. The next day, I'd hand them their tickets, and they'd walk straight into it, smiling, excited, and totally convinced they'd been given the world. Morning came bright and annoyingly cheerful. Saturday, flight day. I got up early and decided to lean into the role of the good son. If I was going to pull this off, it had to look natural. I made them breakfast, the whole deal. The smell filled the kitchen, and by the time Mom walked in, I was halfway through plating. "Wow, someone's up early," she said, surprised. "Big day," I replied, flipping an omelet. "Can't have grease on an empty stomach." Dad walked in, rubbing his eyes, already grinning. "You're spoiling us." "Yeah," I said. "That's the plan." Jessica appeared last, still in pajama pants and holding her phone like it was surgically attached to her hand. "You didn't make oat milk lattes?" I handed her a mug of black coffee. "It's organic," I said. She made a face and sat down. After breakfast, I carried their luggage outside. The morning fog was burning off, the city humming awake. Just as I shut the trunk of the SUV, my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Lanson, walked out with her small dog. She smiled at the sight of the luggage. "Heading somewhere exciting?" she asked. Dad puffed up immediately. "Our son planned a Greece trip for us. Retirement celebration." Mrs. Lanson clapped her hands. "How wonderful! Greece. What a good son you have." I grinned. "Oh, they're going to love every second of it." We piled into the car. The drive to the airport was easy. Saturday morning traffic was light. Jessica talked the entire way. Restaurants she had to visit, souvenirs she had to buy, what pictures would get the most likes. Mom asked if everything was confirmed. "Every last thing," I said. And it was true, just not how they imagined. At the terminal, I parked and started unloading. A porter came over with a cart, and Dad handed him a tip like he was already on vacation. I carried the envelope in my jacket pocket. It had their printed confirmations and the inactive credit card tucked neatly inside. Inside the terminal, Jessica immediately complained about the check-in line. "Can't you just do that priority thing?" she asked. "I'll handle it," I said, heading to the kiosk. I was still the booking holder, so the check-in system let me print their boarding passes and luggage tags myself. While I worked, Jessica started arguing with a staff member about her carry-on size. When it was finally our turn at the counter to drop bags, the airline agent smiled. "Heading to Athens, right?" Dad nodded enthusiastically. "That's right. My son set up everything. Private driver, hotel on the cliffs." The agent began typing, then looked up. "Where are you staying? Do you have a hotel reservation?" I jumped in fast. "Oh, it's through a local company," I said. "I booked it direct. Way better rates that way." I laughed lightly, and she nodded, relieved not to need to chase details. "Got it," she said, printing luggage receipts. Crisis avoided. I glanced at Dad. He was too busy checking his phone to notice anything. After security, we stopped near the entrance to the gates. It was the usual pre-flight goodbye ritual. Mom checking her purse for the 10th time, Dad patting his pockets, Jessica snapping another photo. I pulled out the white envelope. "Here," I said, handing it to Mom. "Open it when you land." She smiled. "What is it?" "Just confirmations and a little something extra." I looked at Jessica. "Everything's prepaid, but just in case you see something nice, that card's loaded. Treat yourselves." Her eyes widened. "Seriously?" "Yeah," I said, straight-faced. "Consider it pocket money." Mom looked touched. "You didn't have to." Dad interrupted. "He's always thinking ahead." "That's my boy." Jessica slipped the envelope into her tote like it was gold. "I'm going to buy something designer," she said. "I'm sure you will," I replied. Their flight was boarding soon, so they started moving toward the gate. Jessica gave me that smug smile, the kind that used to get under my skin when we were kids. "Try not to miss us too much, little bro." I smiled back. Not in the slightest. I walked back through the terminal, feeling lighter than I had in years. The drive home was calm. The city looked different when you weren't the one constantly giving. When I parked in my driveway, the house felt quiet in the best way. I poured myself another coffee, sat on the couch, and finally let out a breath. They were 35,000 feet in the air, smiling, convinced they were about to live my generosity. And I was home, free, finally enjoying the first vacation that actually belonged to me. That peace lasted almost a full day, long enough for them to cross an ocean and the time zones. By the next morning, my phone started vibrating nonstop across the counter. Mom, then Dad, then Jessica. One after another, like an alarm I didn't set. I let it ring. Then a few minutes later, a text popped up from Dad. "We're here, but there's a problem with the driver. Call me." I smiled. "Problem with the driver, huh?" That sounded like the opening act. I didn't reply. 5 minutes later, another text. "No one showed up. We've been waiting over an hour. Please check." Then came the first voicemail. I hit play just to hear his tone. "Hey, son. Not sure what's going on. The driver never came. Can you reach out to the agency and see what's happening?" He sounded calm, hopeful even. The kind of calm that doesn't last. Then another one followed. Mom this time. "Sweetheart, the hotel said they can't find our reservation. Maybe it's under your name." That one made me laugh out loud. It was under my name, all right. Just not active anymore. I kept the phone face down and started a load of laundry. By the time I came back, I had 7 new voicemails and a wall of text messages. I played the next one on speaker while folding a towel. It was Dad again, voice tighter now. "Mark, the hotel says the booking was canceled weeks ago. They're saying we need to make a new one. Call me back immediately." I didn't. Then came the first Jessica message. Voice note, of course. "What is wrong with you?" "The tours are invalid, the driver number doesn't work, and the airline says our return flight isn't even booked anymore." "Are you kidding me, Mark?" I actually paused, folding to laugh. Guess they found out about the return tickets, I muttered to myself. More messages rolled in, one after another. "We're trying to reach the tour company. All canceled. Do you know how embarrassing this is? You're paying for this, Mark." I poured another coffee. The more they panicked, the calmer I felt. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was just quiet relief watching all the pressure I used to carry land where it belonged. A few hours later, another text came through from Mom. "We had to book an Airbnb. It's not great. Please call us." Attached was a photo. I opened it. They were standing in front of what looked like an ancient yellow apartment door, with peeling paint. The caption read, "This is all we could find." Jessica's face in the photo was priceless. Wrinkled nose, hand on her hip, sunglasses crooked. I scrolled down to another message from her, furious this time. "Your stupid card doesn't work. It got declined at dinner. Did you actually think this was funny?" I took a sip of coffee, smirking. "Oh, I did," I said quietly. Then Dad again. Voicemail 14, still trying to sound authoritative. "I don't know what game you're playing, but you need to fix this, son. You ruined your mother's trip. You need to call the airline and rebook us home. Now." Then Mom's voice, softer, shaky. "Mark, please call. Your father's upset. Jessica's... Well, Jessica, we can't stay here much longer. The air conditioner doesn't work, and the walls are damp, and there are roaches everywhere." I listened, leaning back in my chair. Damp walls. Perfect. By evening, they'd apparently found Wi-Fi strong enough to send photos, blurry pictures of their tiny room, a bathroom with cracked tiles, and a caption from Jessica. "You've officially lost your mind." That's when the group message from Dad came in. Sent to both me and Mom. We're buying tickets home early. This trip is over. Unbelievable. No thanks, no apology, just the same arrogance, like they were the victims of a freak weather event instead of their own greed. I didn't reply. I didn't even open it again. I muted the conversation, dropped the phone on the table, and stepped out onto my balcony. The air in San Francisco felt perfect, cool, quiet, steady. The phone buzzed a few more times before it finally went silent. Hours later, curiosity got me, and I checked my voicemail again. Jessica's voice blared through like a siren. I hope you're proud of yourself. We're stranded in Greece. Do you know how expensive this is? You owe us thousands, you jerk. I deleted it before she finished. That night, I made dinner for myself. Grilled chicken, simple salad, no one complaining about oat milk or portion sizes. I ate while scrolling through my photos from the last time I'd been near the ocean. Greece looked nice, sure, but peace of mind tasted better. Before bed, I checked my phone one last time. 47 missed calls. 17 voicemails. One text that made me grin before turning off the screen. It was from Dad. You've gone too far, Mark. You'll regret this. I smiled to myself, stretched, and whispered, already don't. Then I placed the phone face down, switched off the light, and slept like I hadn't in years. By the third day, I figured they'd made it back to the US. I was right. My phone started buzzing again. Voicemails, emails, and a few angry texts. I ignored the first 10, but one subject line caught my eye. Hope you're proud. You stranded your own family. I opened it just for entertainment. It was from Dad. He wrote that their vacation from hell ended with pickpockets in Athens, stealing from them at the train station, that they'd had to scrape together the money for one-way tickets home, and that I had disgraced the family name. I scrolled to the end where he wrote, we were humiliated. I lost my wallet, your mother's purse was stolen, and Jessica was crying at the airport. You should be ashamed. I wasn't. Instead, I poured myself another coffee and replied with one line, maybe next time you'll book your own trips. I hit send and went back to my clinic. 2 days later, things went from personal to public. I got a text from one of my colleagues. Hey man, everything okay? Your sister's posting weird stuff. I checked Facebook. Jessica had gone full meltdown mode. Long posts about toxic siblings, mental instability, and how I emotionally abused my family by canceling their trip. She even called me a narcissistic monster with control issues. The best part? The comments. Half our relatives were cheering her on, the other half asking what she was talking about. It was like watching a family circus online. Then came Instagram. She posted a picture of herself sitting on the edge of a dirty bed, the one from that moldy Airbnb, with the caption, this is what happens when family betrays you. Hashtag mental health, hashtag healing journey. I almost spit my drink laughing. The comments were filled with sympathy from strangers. I scrolled through the responses like I was watching a bad TV show. That night, things escalated again. My parents joined in. Dad wrote this massive paragraph under her post. We raised a son we thought had morals, but money changed him. What he did to his own family is unforgivable. Mom commented right under it with a sad face emoji and, please pray for our family. The performance was so dramatic it almost deserved an award. Then came the part that actually crossed the line. Jessica made an anonymous Reddit post, at least she thought it was anonymous, saying she'd gone to a crazy expensive clinic in San Francisco, run by a cold doctor who ruined her mental health. The description matched my practice perfectly. She didn't name me, but it wasn't subtle. It took about an hour before one of my patients sent me the link saying, this sounds like you? That was enough. I called my lawyer the next morning. He's a calm guy, the kind who never raises his voice but makes people regret trying him. I told him everything. The trip, the posts, the fake accusations. He chuckled halfway through and said, we'll send them a reminder that defamation has consequences. We sent them by email first, then physical copies overnight. We also filed in-app reports on every platform to flag the content while the letters were processing. That sped things up. 2 days later, the silence was beautiful. Jessica deleted every post. My parents took down their comments, and the anonymous Reddit account mysteriously vanished. Then Dad finally broke and texted me. We can't believe you'd threaten your own family with a lawsuit. We're already broke from that trip, and now you want to destroy us completely? I typed back, you did that yourselves. He didn't answer. A few hours later, Mom tried again. Mark, please stop this. Your father's blood pressure is up. Jessica's in bed crying. You've made your point. I ignored it. I wasn't interested in emotional reruns. That evening, I got another email, short this time. It read, we're withdrawing everything. We can't afford to fight this. And that was that. They didn't apologize. They didn't take responsibility. They just folded the moment consequences showed up. I didn't reply. The next day at work, a nurse came into my office holding her phone. "Dr. Thompson," she said, "is this your sister?" Jessica had tried posting one last dig. Something vague like, "Some people are so obsessed with control, they ruin lives." But it barely got 5 likes before she took it down. I smiled at the nurse and said, "Not my problem." By that weekend, everything had gone quiet again. My phone didn't buzz. My email inbox was clean. My house finally felt like mine. No noise, no guilt. On Sunday night, I was sitting on the balcony, watching the city lights when a long text came through. It was from Dad, written like some grand moral speech. "We can't believe our own son would do this. We gave you everything, and you repay us with humiliation. You embarrassed us in front of the whole family. We raised you better than this." I read it twice, then typed one simple reply. "You replaced me, so I replaced your comfort. Consider us even." Then I hit send, turned off my phone, and leaned back in my chair. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the background character in their story. I wasn't the helper, the fixer, or the forgotten son trying to prove something. I was just me. And that was more peace than any vacation could have bought. The calm lasted 3 solid weeks before the circus rolled back into town. It was a Tuesday morning at the clinic. My last patient had just left, and the waiting room was empty. Security was on standby to keep things private in case any of my family's drama spilled out. I was sitting in my office reviewing lab notes, half a cup of coffee still warm on the desk. The door burst open without a knock. Dad's face was red, Mom's eyes wild. Behind them stood Jessica, phone already raised, camera recording. "So this is how you treat family?" Dad shouted. "You think this is funny? You think leaving us stranded like animals makes you some kind of hero?" I looked up from my computer, calm as ever. "Good morning to you too." Mom slammed her purse on my desk. "We lost everything. Do you understand that? That trip cost us thousands more because of you." Jessica's voice was sharp and shaky. "He doesn't care, Mom. He's a narcissist. Keep going. I'm recording all of this." I reached for my coffee and took a slow sip, eyes on her. "Jessica," I said flatly, "I don't consent to being filmed. You post that, I'll sue you for defamation, privacy violation, and whatever else my lawyer decides sounds fun that day." Her hand wavered. She lowered the phone. Dad stepped forward, pointing a finger at me. "You ruined your parents' retirement trip. You embarrassed us in front of everyone. The neighbors are laughing. The family's laughing. We're broke because of you." "Broke?" I said. "You spent my gift money on a vacation you stole." "That's not being broke. That's called math catching up." He slammed his palm on my desk. "You're going to pay us back every cent." I didn't flinch. "No, I'm not." Mom's voice cracked. "We're your parents. How can you talk to us like this?" I leaned back, still holding the coffee mug. "You ruined your own trip the second you swapped the guest list." For a second, no one spoke. Even Jessica froze. Dad's expression twisted like I'd slapped him. "You think you're clever, huh? We raised an ungrateful child." "Yeah," I said. "You raised 2 kids, actually. You just never stopped raising one of them." Jessica gasped. "Oh my God, you're unbelievable." "Thanks," I said. "Now, unless one of you needs medical care, this is my workplace, and I'd appreciate you leaving before I call security." That broke the silence. They spun around and stormed out, Jessica muttering something about exposing me online. The hallway door slammed so hard the frame shook. My nurse poked her head in a second later, eyes wide. "Was that your family?" "Unfortunately," I said, taking another sip. "But they're discharged now." By the afternoon, the smear campaign had begun. It started with a few Facebook posts from Mom, long, teary paragraphs about how their own son destroyed their lives, how they were humiliated and penniless, how kindness was repaid with cruelty. And then Dad followed, making phone calls to every relative he could reach, retelling the Grease story but with a creative spin. In his version, I'd hacked their trip, stolen their money, and laughed while they suffered abroad. By Friday, my phone was lighting up with messages from cousins, aunts, and people I hadn't heard from in years. "You went too far, Mark. They're your parents. Show some respect. Everyone makes mistakes. You should have forgiven them." One relative even texted, "You're lucky Grandpa doesn't hear about this. He'd lose it." I smiled. "Perfect," I muttered. Exactly who I wanted to hear about it. Sure enough, 2 days later, Grandpa called. Now my grandfather's not a man who wastes words. Retired military, sharp as ever, the kind of guy who can silence a room just by exhaling. He said, "I've been getting calls all week about you and your parents. I'm done hearing both sides secondhand. We're having dinner, tomorrow night. Everyone's coming. We'll settle this like adults. I could hear the clinking of his old pocket watch chain over the phone. It was the sound of finality. Sure, I said. Tell everyone I'll be there. He paused. You're not going to start yelling, are you? No, Grandpa, I said, smiling. I'm bringing receipts, not a megaphone. He chuckled once. That's my boy. When I hung up, I stared at my calendar. Tomorrow night, 7 p.m. The grand showdown. Part of me felt exhausted already. Another part felt strangely ready. I wasn't going to explain or beg or justify anything. I didn't need to. They wanted an audience? Fine. Let them have one. I spent that night going through my files. The travel receipts, the booking confirmations, the email trails. Every single thing was organized and printed. I wasn't there to argue. I was there to end the noise permanently. Before I left work the next day, I told my receptionist, if anyone calls claiming to be my mother again, tell them I'm in busy for the next 10 years. She laughed, thinking I was joking. That evening, I drove across town to Grandpa's house, the same house that used to host every Thanksgiving when I was a kid. As I parked outside, I could already see silhouettes through the window. Mom pacing, Dad talking with his hands, Jessica scrolling on her phone like it was a shield. Grandpa sat at the head of the dining table, quiet, unmoving. I took a deep breath, straightened my jacket, and walked toward the door. On any other night, this would have been another normal family dinner. But tonight? Tonight was the night I'd stop being the family's scapegoat and start being the reminder of what boundaries look like. I rang the doorbell once. Grandpa opened it himself, expression unreadable. Glad you came, he said. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, stepping inside. The air was thick, the tension almost physical. Everyone turned toward me. This wasn't going to be a fight. It was going to be a reckoning. The whole family was gathered around the table like a court hearing. Grandpa sat at the head in his gray cardigan. His expression said one wrong word and you're done. Mom sat beside Dad, whispering nervously. Jessica scrolled through her phone, pretending she didn't care. I sat across from them, hands folded, calm as a surgeon before a procedure. Grandpa cleared his throat. The chatter died instantly. Well, he said slowly, looking straight at me, I've heard the stories. You stranded your parents in a foreign country, left them broke, humiliated, and, well, furious. He leaned forward, eyes sharp. That true? I met his stare. Mostly, his brow furrowed. Mark, that's not how family treats family. You went too far. I didn't flinch. They went first. He raised an eyebrow. Explain. So I did. I told him everything, but not emotionally. Just facts. Calm and measured. How I'd been helping them with bills since my 20s. How I paid for repairs, birthdays, flights, and emergencies that somehow always benefited Jessica. I described how I planned the Greece trip, a retirement gift meant to celebrate Dad's hard work. How I saved, booked everything under my account, and wanted to make them proud. Then I told him how it ended before it even began. How they replaced me without a second thought. Dad showed up at the airport with Jessica instead of me, I said evenly. Told me she needed fresh air, that I wouldn't mind giving up my spot. Like it was nothing, like I didn't exist. Jessica rolled her eyes. Oh, please, you're exaggerating. I looked at her. You took my seat on a trip I paid for, Jessica. The room went silent. Even Grandpa didn't interrupt. I continued. You all humiliated me that day. Not by taking the trip, by proving I never really mattered to this family unless I was paying for something. Mom whispered, That's not fair. It's accurate, I said. You've enabled her for years. Every mistake, every failure. She never faced consequences. I work my entire life, and you reward her laziness by taking my place. So yeah, I let you go to Greece. I just made sure it matched what you gave me. Nothing. Grandpa's expression hardened. He sat back, arms crossed. Dad spoke up, voice rising. We made a mistake, but what you did was cruel, Mark. We were stranded in another country. You stranded me in my own family, I said. You just finally got a taste of it. Jessica slammed her phone down. This is ridiculous. You're all acting like I'm the villain because I wanted to travel. You're so dramatic. Grandpa turned to her slowly. Jessica, be quiet. She froze. Grandpa rarely raised his voice, but when he did, the air shifted. He looked at her the way only an old man who's run out of patience can. You're 37 years old, still living off your parents, and you've got the nerve to act entitled to other people's work? Your brother gives your father the gift of a lifetime, and you take it because you needed fresh air? Shameful. Jessica's mouth fell open. You're taking his side? His side is the only one that makes sense, Grandpa said. Your parents enabled this, and now they're crying about consequences. Dad started. We didn't. Grandpa slammed his hand on the table, making the plates rattle. Enough. You two raised one child to work for everything, and another to expect everything. You took from the wrong one this time. The room went dead silent. He turned to me. Mark, you got receipts? I nodded and slid the folder across the table. Everything. Flights, hotels, refunds. I didn't make a penny from it. Just deleted their comfort. Grandpa skimmed a few pages, then looked back at Mom and Dad. You're going to pay him back. Every cent. Every booking. Every fee. I clarified that most of the big charges were already refunded or credited back to me. What they owed was just the non-refundable stuff and the hassle they created. Dad's eyes widened. Dad, come on, we can't afford... You should have thought about that before stealing from him, Grandpa cut in. Mom's lip trembled. We didn't steal, we just... You took his gift and gave it away, Grandpa said coldly. If that's not stealing, it's something worse. Jessica crossed her arms. I'm not paying him anything. Grandpa turned to her. You don't have to. You're done. No more help from this family. No money, no excuses. You want to live like an adult? Start acting like one. Jessica shot up from her chair. You're all toxic. Every one of you. Grandpa's voice boomed. Sit down. She froze mid-step, eyes wide. He pointed to the door. Actually, forget it. Go. You've said enough. She stormed out, the front door slamming so hard the windows shook. Mom started crying softly. Dad stared down at his plate, speechless. Grandpa stood, still calm. You two owe your son an apology. Right now. It took them a moment, but they did. Dad's voice cracked. Mark, we're sorry. You didn't deserve that. Mom nodded through tears. You've always been good to us. We just didn't see it. I nodded. I know. We ate in silence after that. The food was cold, the air thick. When it was finally over, Grandpa walked me to the door. On the porch, he handed me my folder back. You handled yourself like a man, he said quietly. You didn't yell, you didn't throw punches, you showed them the truth. That's more powerful than anything. I nodded, smiling faintly. They needed that. He nodded. They did. But don't carry their mistakes any longer. You did your part. I thanked him and walked to my car. The night air was cool, the streetlights humming softly. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like the outsider of my own bloodline. As I pulled out of the driveway, I glanced in the rearview mirror at Grandpa's house fading behind me. It wasn't just revenge anymore. It was closure. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Story 4. On Christmas Day, Mom said, "You won't last a month without us." Now they barely can afford a small apartment. Hard pass. Sup Reddit. I grew up in one of those families where favoritism wasn't just obvious, it was brutal. So I said nah, screw them, built my own life, and moved on. This is going to be a long ride, but what happened to those people is worth the wait. Before we get to that, let me start from the beginning. I, 28th male, was the older one. My brother came along 6 years after me, so when I was 12 and trying to get through school, he was 6 and already being treated like royalty. He could do no wrong. My parents were obsessed with him, like he was this miracle child. Me? I was just there. The kid who was tolerated, but never really seen. I remember this one night in middle school. I came home with this little certificate from a math competition. Nothing huge, but I'd worked hard. And honestly, I was proud of myself. I walked into the kitchen, showed it to my mom, and she barely looked at it. She literally said, "That's nice, but you know, it's not like math contests matter in the real world." And my dad didn't even glance up from the TV. He just muttered, "Your brother's the one who's going to do big things. You'll see." And then, like clockwork, my brother walked in, probably 10 years old at the time, and asked for a new iPhone. My mom's face lit up like it was the best request she'd ever heard. "Of course, sweetheart. You deserve it." My dad smiled and said, "We'll make it happen." Meanwhile, my certificate sat on the counter untouched, forgotten. Even chores showed the favoritism. I'd be the one washing dishes, mowing the lawn, cleaning my room, helping out with groceries. My brother? He'd be in his room playing video games. And if I dared complain, my mom would snap, "Don't bother him. He needs to rest. He's young." I wasn't much older, but apparently my childhood didn't count. It wasn't just at home either. Family gatherings were rough. Relatives would always hear my parents brag about my brother. "He's so smart, so talented, such a good boy." Then they'd look at me and go, "Oh, and how are you?" Like I was the footnote. I tried not to let it sting, but when you're a kid, it gets in your head. You start to believe you're less than. The worst part is how subtle it could be sometimes. My brother would make a dumb joke, and everyone would laugh like he was the funniest kid alive. I'd say something actually witty, and I'd get a half smile at best. He'd get gifts for no reason. New games, clothes, gadgets. If I asked for something, I'd get a lecture about money not growing on trees. I think what really cemented it for me was when my brother started actually talking down to me. Even as a kid, he picked up on the favoritism and used it. He'd say stuff like, "Mom and Dad love me more," or "You're just jealous." And if I snapped back at him, guess who got in trouble? Yep, me. Always me. Looking back now, I see it was textbook narcissistic family dynamics. I can still hear my mom's voice sometimes, dismissive and cold. "Why can't you be more like your brother?" That line stuck with me for years, and it became the fuel I needed later. Growing up, Christmas was never fun for me. People always talk about it like it's this warm family holiday, but in my house, it was just another reminder of who mattered and who didn't. I told myself every year, next year will be different. It never was. The Christmas that changed everything? I was 19. I was already exhausted from years of being treated like the unwanted kid. I'd been working part-time at a store, saving whatever I could. My plan was to leave at some point, but I didn't know when. Turns out, Christmas gave me the final push. We were all sitting at the table. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, the whole thing. My brother was sitting there bragging about how he was going to take over the family business someday. He was barely 13, but my parents were nodding like he was a genius. He said something like, "When I'm in charge, I'll make it even bigger. Everyone will know our name." Mom replied, "You're so smart. You'll do amazing things." Then Dad added, "That's my boy." Then my mom looked at me like she suddenly remembered I was sitting there. "So, are you still working that little retail job?" I said, "Yeah." She sighed loudly and shook her head. "You should be more like your brother. Look at how ambitious he is." Dad continued, "Honestly, you're just drifting. No goals, no drive. I don't know how you'll survive on your own." And my brother laughed, right in my face. "Yeah, maybe you should just work for me when I take over. I'll give you something easy, like cleaning the office." Everyone at the table laughed, except me. I sat there staring at my plate, gripping the fork so hard my knuckles hurt. Something broke in me that night. After dinner, it was time for presents. My brother tore into box after box. A brand new gaming console, designer sneakers, expensive headphones, a pile of gift cards. Then it was my turn. I pulled a small bag toward me. Inside, socks. One pair. My mom smiled like she'd just solved world hunger. "Practical, right? You needed new ones." My brother snickered, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Wow, exciting. Don't spend it all at once." The room laughed. I forced a laugh too, but it came out bitter. "Yeah, thanks. Just what I always wanted. Socks." While he gets half them all. The room went quiet for a second, and my mom's smile dropped. "Don't be ungrateful. Your brother works hard. He deserves what he gets." I stared at her. "He's 13. He doesn't even make his own bed. What exactly is he working hard at?" My brother jumped in instantly, grinning. "At being better than you." The laughter started again, louder this time, and I felt my chest tighten. My dad shook his head. "You always have to ruin things. Always jealous. Maybe if you weren't so lazy, we'd be proud of you too." I leaned back in my chair, smirked, and said flatly, "Yeah, because nothing screams pride like handing everything to someone who hasn't earned it. Guess socks are the perfect gift for the family disappointment, huh?" My brother's grin slipped for the first time. My mom snapped, "Enough! Stop acting like a victim. This is why you'll never get anywhere." I shrugged, cold as ice. "Then don't be surprised when I stop coming back here." The tension in the room was thick enough to choke on. Nobody laughed after that. That night, I went up to my room and sat on the bed, looking at that one pair of socks. It wasn't about the socks. It was the years of being treated like I didn't matter, like I was less than human. I pulled out the small stash of cash I'd been saving from my job. It wasn't much, but it was enough for first month's rent at the crappy little apartment I'd found a few weeks earlier. I had already scoped it out but hadn't committed yet. At that moment, I knew I was done waiting. I packed my clothes into 2 duffel bags, grabbed my books, and my secondhand laptop. That was pretty much all I owned. As I walked downstairs, my mom saw me with the bags. Mom frowned, arms crossed. "What are you doing?" "I'm leaving," I said, slinging the bag over my shoulder. Dad snapped instantly. "Don't be stupid. It's Christmas." "Exactly," I shot back. "And I'd rather be alone than sit here being laughed at in my own family." The air went cold. My mom's eyes narrowed, then she scoffed. "You won't last a month without us." I smirked. Then you won't have to put up with me for very long, will you? Dad's voice rose. Go ahead, but don't come crawling back when you fail. I leaned toward him just slightly, steady and calm. Don't worry. Crawling's always been his job. I nodded at my brother. He leaned back in his chair with that smug grin he always wore. Good luck being a loser on your own. I looked him dead in the eye. Better a loser on my own than a king on a leash. And just like that, I walked out. On Christmas night, while everyone else was watching holiday movies or drinking cocoa, I was carrying 2 bags across town to a half-empty apartment. The apartment was tiny. 1 bedroom, peeling paint, carpet that smelled weird. My bed was just a mattress on the floor. I sat there in the cold, eating leftover instant noodles from my job shift the day before, and listened to the sound of people celebrating outside. Leaving on Christmas made it sting more for them, I think. They couldn't pretend everything was perfect anymore. Their scapegoat had walked away, right in the middle of their favorite holiday. When I left on Christmas, part of me thought maybe my family would finally notice. But that didn't happen. The spotlight was all his, and my parents couldn't get enough. From what I heard not long after I left, my parents handed him the family business. He was barely out of school, no experience, no clue how the real world worked, but to them he was some prodigy. They treated him like a genius before he'd done a single thing. Meanwhile, I was working long shifts in retail, trying to keep my tiny apartment afloat, eating ramen every night. The contrast made me sick, but it also became kind of normal. My mom would still call me once in a while, but never to ask how I was doing. Every call was basically just a bragging session about him. Your brother is doing so well. He's such a natural leader. We're just so proud of him. That's how every conversation started and ended. I'd try to slip in something about myself, like how I was keeping up with bills or how I was picking up extra hours. She'd barely acknowledge it, then circle back to him. After a while, I stopped trying. Sometimes I'd still get pulled into family gatherings. I'd sit there and watch my parents parade him around like a trophy. Look at our boy, already running the business, already thinking ahead. He's such a blessing. They beamed with pride every time he opened his mouth. Then someone would politely ask about me, and the whole vibe would change. My mom's face would flatten, and she'd say something like, "Oh, he's working somewhere, he's fine." That was it. I wasn't amazing. I wasn't ambitious. I wasn't anything. Just fine. It wasn't just words either. My parents spoiled him rotten in ways I couldn't even believe. First, it was one house, a giant place worth over $1 million. Then another one, even bigger, worth more than $1.5 million, right next door to their own. They wanted him close forever, their pride and joy living just a few steps away. My mom once said to me, "It's so nice having him nearby. We'll always be together as a family." She didn't even realize the irony. We, as if I wasn't part of that sentence. By then, his ego was massive. He acted like he was untouchable. He'd walk around like he owned the town, talking down to people, throwing money around, showing off his cars and clothes. He started to believe he was born above everyone else, and my parents fed into it nonstop. They were his biggest fans, his cheerleaders, his safety net. I was walking home from work one evening, still in my wrinkled shirt from a long shift. My grocery bag was heavy in my hand, filled with basics like bread, eggs, and pasta. As I cut across the parking lot, I saw him, leaning against a shiny car my parents had basically gifted him. Sunglasses on even though the sun was nearly gone, arms crossed, smirk plastered across his face like he was in a magazine ad. He straightened up as soon as he saw me. "Well, well, well, what do we have here?" he said, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Still walking around like a nobody. Don't you get tired of carrying bags home like some broke student?" I kept walking, didn't even look at him, but he wasn't going to let me pass. He stepped right into my path. "Seriously, what do you even make?" he pushed. "Barely enough to survive, right? Look at me. 2 houses, 3 cars, vacations whenever I want. You ran away from all of this just so you could, what? Walk to the bus stop like a loser?" I stopped and looked at him. No emotion, no anger, just flat. "At least what I have is mine." For half a second, his smirk slipped, but then he laughed, loud and fake. "Yours? That tiny paycheck? That's nothing. I wipe my ass with that. You think bagging groceries and fixing computers makes you a man? You'll never be on my level. Never." He started circling me, still talking, like he was performing. "You know the difference between us? When I walk in a room, people notice. They respect me. They know I matter. You're invisible. Always have been. Always will be." I adjusted the grocery bag on my shoulder, looked him dead in the eye, and said coldly, "Your so-called respect is rented, not owned. And when the money's gone, so is the illusion. That one landed. His fists clenched. He sneered, "You think you're better than me? You'll never be more than average. You can keep playing house with your little job, but deep down, you know you're nothing without us." I stepped closer, close enough he couldn't mistake what I was saying. "I know exactly who I am. And unlike you, I don't need them to breathe. I don't need anyone." For the first time, he had nothing. He just stood there, face red, sputtering. Finally, he spat, "Keep lying to yourself," and stormed back to his car, slamming the door so hard it echoed through the lot. I shifted the grocery bag in my hand and kept walking, calm. No sadness, no anger, just cold indifference. He wanted me to break down, to snap, to prove I was still the weak one. But I wasn't. Not anymore. Next. The years that came after were some of the toughest of my life, and there were times I honestly thought about giving up and crawling back just for the security. But I never did. That first apartment was so small it barely counted as one. You could stand in the middle of the room, stretch your arms, and touch both walls. The carpet had stains I couldn't scrub out, and the heater only half worked. My bed was a mattress on the floor with no frame. I didn't even have a proper table. I ate most meals sitting on a folding chair with a plate balanced on my lap. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I worked retail back then, barely making enough to cover rent and groceries. Most weeks I was down to coins by the end of the month. There were nights I had to decide between keeping the lights on or buying enough food. Some nights I'd boil pasta with nothing but butter and salt because that's all I had. I remember one Christmas about 2 years after I left. My brother had apparently just been given another car by my parents. Some fancy brand new thing. My mom called me to brag about it, like she always did. "Your brother is so responsible. He deserves it." I was sitting there staring at my overdue bill notices, and I couldn't help but laugh. Responsible? He hadn't worked a day in his life. Everything he had was handed to him. But in her eyes, he could do no wrong. There were nights I broke down. I'd sit on the mattress, head in my hands, and wonder if they were right. Maybe I'd always be a failure. But then I'd remember the way my brother smirked at me on that last Christmas, telling me I'd be a loser without them. And something in me refused to give him the satisfaction of being right. I bounced between jobs a lot during that time. Retail, food service, even warehouse work. None of it paid much, but I kept hustling. I applied to hundreds of better jobs, most of which rejected me. Still, I didn't stop. I knew if I just kept grinding, something would eventually click. There were small victories that kept me going, saving up enough to buy my first decent piece of furniture, like a proper bed frame, fixing up a used laptop and realizing I could teach myself some basic coding online. At night, I started teaching myself coding, free courses online, YouTube tutorials, forums. At first, it was frustrating. I'd write code that didn't work and feel like smashing the keyboard. But slowly, things clicked. And with every small breakthrough, I felt myself growing. One of the hardest conversations I had with my dad came during this time. I ran into him randomly when I was visiting a friend. He gave me that look, the one he always gave when he thought I was beneath him. "So," he said, eyeing me up and down, "you're still working those little jobs?" He smirked. "Don't you get tired of being average?" I shifted my weight, steadying the grocery bag in my hand, and looked him straight in the eye. My voice was even, calm. "At least I'm doing it on my own." He snorted, shaking his head. "On your own? Don't kid yourself. You'll be crawling back eventually. You're not built for real success." His jaw tightened as he spoke, like he was daring me to argue. I didn't raise my voice. I just let the words land quietly. I'd rather crawl on my own than be carried on a leash. His eyes narrowed instantly. He stepped in closer, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of cologne mixed with cigarette smoke. "Watch your mouth," he hissed. "You wouldn't last a day if it weren't for us. Everything you know, everything you are, came from me and your mother." His finger jabbed toward my chest. His face red. I didn't move back. My voice stayed cold. "Everything I am came from surviving you and her. Don't mix that up." His face twisted. For a second, I thought he might swing at me. His fists were clenched. He leaned forward, practically spitting his words. "You think you're strong? You're pathetic. You'll regret turning your back on your family. One day you'll come crawling, and I'll be the one to slam the door." I didn't blink. My expression didn't change. "If that day comes, it'll be because I chose it, not because I need you. And you can't slam a door that was never open for me in the first place." His mouth opened, then closed. He glared at me with pure hatred in his eyes, like he wanted to break me right there. But he didn't. He turned on his heel, shoulders tense, and walked away without another word. I didn't argue. I just let him walk away. But I promised myself silently that one day I'd prove him wrong. But it forced me to grow in ways my brother never had to. He was pampered. I was forged in fire. After a couple of years of scraping by, something finally shifted. It wasn't sudden, just slow, steady progress that built up until I realized my life didn't feel like drowning anymore. I was still working those retail and warehouse jobs when I saw an ad online for an IT support position at a mid-sized company. The pay wasn't huge, about $45,000 a year, but compared to what I was making, it felt like winning the lottery. I had always been decent with computers, fixing my own busted laptop, helping friends set up Wi-Fi, troubleshooting little things. I figured, why not? I applied, half expecting to get rejected like usual, but they called me for an interview. I still remember sitting there in my one decent button-up shirt, sweating bullets. The guy interviewing me asked a ton of technical questions. Some I knew, some I didn't. But I guess I was honest and showed I was willing to learn, because 2 weeks later they called me with an offer. I started the next Monday. That job changed everything. For the first time, I had a consistent paycheck that actually covered my bills without leaving me with an empty wallet by week 2. I could buy groceries without triple checking my bank balance. I could pay rent on time without begging for extra shifts. I could finally breathe. I didn't waste time. I showed up early, stayed late, and tried to learn everything I could. I fixed computers, answered tickets, set up equipment, sometimes even cleaned up server closets. It wasn't glamorous, but I cared. After years of being told I was worthless, I wanted to prove, to myself, not even to them, that I could do this. After about a year, my manager called me into his office. I thought I was in trouble. Instead, he said, "We've noticed how hard you work. We'd like to promote you to IT specialist." The raise wasn't insane, but going from $45,000 to $65,000 felt massive. Plus, benefits, health insurance, paid time off, stuff my brother would take for granted but to me was life-changing. I celebrated in my own way. I'd been saving every spare dollar, eating cheap meals, avoiding luxuries. So when that promotion came, I finally let myself have something I'd wanted since I was a teenager. A motorcycle. It wasn't brand new, just a used model I found online. But when I rode it home for the first time, wind in my face, I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in years. That was mine. I also treated myself to a PlayStation 4. It sounds small, but after years of struggling, sitting down at night to play video games felt like reclaiming a part of my childhood I never got to enjoy. I'd work during the day, study coding at night, and on weekends I'd go for long rides or lose myself in a game. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. That night, I sat in my apartment and thought about it. It wasn't an overnight change, but as the years went on, I noticed a shift in myself. I was calmer. I didn't feel the constant weight of being judged. I didn't wake up every day waiting for someone to remind me I wasn't enough. I was enough, and I was proving it with every paycheck, every skill learned, every little milestone. Sometimes I'd still hear my parents' voices in my head. "You won't last a month without us." But then I'd look around at my apartment, my motorcycle parked outside, the job I had worked my ass off to get, and I'd think, I lasted. I lasted without you, and I'm still here. For a long time, I thought my brother would just keep coasting forever. He had the business, the houses, my parents wrapped around his finger. From the outside, it looked like he was set for life, and maybe that's what he thought too. But the thing about being handed everything is, you never learn how to actually take care of it. You don't learn responsibility when you've always had someone cleaning up after you. At first, I only heard whispers. A friend who knew someone that worked for him mentioned that people were quitting, money was disappearing, and people were saying he was more interested in showing off than actually working. My parents, of course, kept up appearances. They'd still call me, bragging about how hardworking he was, how innovative his ideas were. But I could hear it in their voices. Cracks were forming. One time, my mom slipped. She said, "Your brother is under so much stress. Running a business is hard. You wouldn't understand." I asked what kind of stress, and she snapped, "Don't be nosy. Just worry about yourself." That was the first time I realized they were covering for him. Turns out, he was. The cracks started to show. He stopped bragging as much. My mom's phone calls, which used to be full of endless stories about his success, got shorter. She still bragged, of course, but you could hear the strain in her voice. I asked once if everything was okay, and she snapped at me. "Why are you always so negative? You should be proud of your brother." That was the tell. When they got defensive, it meant the rumors were true. Then it wasn't whispers anymore. People in town started talking openly about how the business was going downhill fast. Contracts were being lost, clients were walking away, and vendors weren't getting paid on time. My brother, the so-called prodigy, was drowning. But instead of admitting it, he doubled down on arrogance. I saw him once around this time, at a gas station of all places. He was still driving one of his fancy cars, but you could see the stress on his face. He spotted me and immediately went on the attack, like he always did. "Well, look who it is," he said. "Enjoying your little desk job? Filing papers? Fixing printers? Being everyone's errand boy?" He tilted his head, grinning. "Meanwhile, I'm dealing with real problems. You wouldn't understand what it's like to be responsible for something big." I didn't take the bait. I just gave him a thin smile. "Yeah, looks like it." His face turned red, his chest puffing up like he was about to explode. "You smug little—" he started, but he stopped himself. His voice cracked just slightly, and he knew I heard it. That made him even angrier. "You think you're winning just because you can afford groceries now? Pathetic. You'll always be beneath me." I adjusted the grocery bag in my hand. Steady. Calm. "You're confusing loud with powerful. You've always been loud. But now, you're just loud and broke." Not long after, the whole thing collapsed. The business went under. My brother declared bankruptcy. Those houses my parents had bought him, they turned into anchors, dragging him deeper. He couldn't keep up with the costs, and suddenly the golden boy wasn't shining anymore. The fallout hit my parents hard too. They had poured everything into him. Money, resources, even their own savings. They believed he was their ticket to a legacy, that he'd take care of them when they got older. Instead, he dragged them down with him. They went from bragging constantly to going quiet. And when they did call me, it wasn't to brag anymore. It was to beg. My mom called one night, her voice tighter than usual. "We're going through a difficult time. You're doing well now, right? Maybe you could help us out a little." I almost laughed. "Help you out? After everything?" She didn't flinch. "Families should support each other. After all we've done for you." That line made my blood boil. After all they'd done for me? What exactly was that? Neglect? Insults? I bit my tongue and just said, "I can't." But they didn't stop. My dad called next. "You need to step up. We gave your brother everything so he could succeed, but things happen. Now it's your turn to give back." I told him flat out, "You never gave me anything. Don't try to rewrite history." He got angry, like he always did when I didn't bend. "Ungrateful. That's what you are. Heartless." And then he hung up. The guilt trips kept coming, but I was done. I wasn't the scared kid at their dinner table anymore. I was an adult, with my own life, built by my own effort. They had made their choices, and this was the result. The wildest part was my brother. Even broke, even failing, he still acted like he was above me. He cornered me one afternoon, still trying to act like he was in control even though everyone knew he was broke. His clothes looked cheaper than before, but the arrogance was the same. "Don't think for a second you're better than me," he sneered. "You just got lucky. I had houses, cars, respect. People knew who I was. You're still nothing." I smirked, tilting my head. "Yeah, funny how all that respect vanished the second your credit dried up. Almost like they only liked your wallet, not you." His eyes narrowed. "Shut up. You'll never be on my level. You'll always be the pathetic one, walking around with your little job while I was running an empire. The delusion is real, ladies and gentlemen." I chuckled. "Empire? You mean the business mom and dad gift-wrapped for you? The one you managed to sink faster than the Titanic? Yeah, real impressive." His face turned red. "You don't know what you're talking about. Running a business is stressful." "Right," I cut in, raising an eyebrow. "So stressful you couldn't even keep employees from quitting in droves. So stressful you burned through money like a kid in a candy store. You weren't a boss? You were a spoiled kid playing dress-up." He stepped closer, trying to tower over me. "Say that again." I leaned in just slightly, voice calm, almost amused. "You're broke, dependent, and still bragging like you're a king. But kings don't beg their brothers for help, do they?" He clenched his fists, sputtering, trying to come up with something. "You're just jealous. You'll never be as important as me." I smiled coldly. "You're right. I'll never be like you. Because I don't need mommy and daddy to bankroll my life. I don't need a kingdom built on lies. I've got something you'll never have. Freedom." That last word hung in the air. He went silent, jaw working like he wanted to spit something out, but nothing came. His arrogance cracked for just a moment, and in that silence, he knew I'd won. He turned away, muttering under his breath, and walked off with his head down. That's when I knew I'd made the right choice leaving, because while they were chained to each other, dragging themselves down, I was free. When everything came crashing down for my brother and my parents, it was like watching a movie I'd already predicted years before. I always knew their little kingdom was built on sand, but seeing it actually collapse, that was something else. For the first time in my life, they needed me. The same people who told me I wouldn't last a month on my own were suddenly on the phone, hinting, asking, begging for help. I remember the first time my mom really came out and said it. "You're doing well now, right? Maybe you could support us a little. Family helps family." The audacity almost made me laugh. Family helps family. That was never true when I was the one struggling. My dad tried too, but in his usual angry way. He called me one night and started lecturing before I even said hello. "You're selfish. You've turned your back on your family. We gave your brother everything so he could take care of us, and he's going through a rough patch. Now it's your responsibility to step up. You can't abandon your family." I let him rant, then said, "You didn't give me anything. You spent my entire life tearing me down. Don't try to rewrite history now." He called me ungrateful, heartless, every word he could throw, but it didn't land. Not anymore. I just hung up. They didn't stop, though. The guilt trips kept coming in waves. It got so bad at one point that they actually showed up at my job. I was at my desk, mid-shift. I looked up and saw them standing there in the lobby like they owned the place. My mom had that fake sad look plastered on her face. My dad standing stiff beside her with his arms crossed. I walked over, keeping my voice low. "What are you doing here?" My mom wasted no time. "We've been calling and you never answer. You never visit us anymore. Do you know how hurtful that is? We're your parents. You're supposed to be there for us." I crossed my arms. "I'm at work. You can't just show up here." My dad jumped in, voice sharp. "Don't talk to your mother like that. She's right. You've abandoned us. You sit here making money and you don't even think about helping your family. After everything we gave you?" I actually laughed. "Everything you gave me? You mean the years of neglect and lectures about how I'd never survive? Yeah, thanks for that." My mom's eyes narrowed. The sad act slipped. "You're cold, heartless. We raised you. You wouldn't even exist if it weren't for us, and this is how you treat us?" I tilted my head. "Funny, I exist just fine without you. Haven't I?" My dad leaned in. "You're going to regret this. One day you'll come crawling back." I gave him the smallest smirk. "You've been waiting for that day for years. Still hasn't come, has it?" For a second, they both just stood there, fuming. My co-workers were pretending not to watch, but I could feel eyes on us. I didn't care. I wasn't embarrassed. I wasn't the weak one in this scene. I pointed toward the door. "You need to leave. I've got work to do. If you want someone to bankroll you, go find the golden child." "Oh wait, you already tried that, didn't you?" My dad's face went red. My mom muttered something about me being ungrateful, and they turned and walked out. I went right back to work, calm, confident, and unshaken. The shift was obvious, even to them. The whole power dynamic had flipped, and they couldn't handle it. Things only went downhill for them. The business was gone, the money was gone, and all those houses they used to brag about, one by one, sold off just to cover debts. They went from showing off at family dinners to quietly renting a tiny apartment in a bad part of town. And my brother? Oh man, he still refused to accept reality. He sat around like he was too good for an ordinary job. My dad even suggested he take something entry-level just to keep afloat. He exploded. "Me? Work like some average nobody? Do you know who I am? I'm not wasting my time with that." He really believed he was still royalty, even though he was broke and living in a shoebox. Meanwhile, my life was moving in the opposite direction. All the years of grinding finally paid off. My boss called me in one morning and said, "We've been impressed with your work. We'd like to promote you to senior lead." The salary jump was huge, double what I'd started with years before. So when people ask if I regret leaving, even with all the struggles I went through, I tell them no. Walking out on Christmas night was the best decision I ever made. Story 5. Parents told everyone I'm the loser of this family, but years later. We meet again and they can't believe. My wife, who's 35, and I, 36, live on the other side of the country from my family. We only visit them for weddings, funerals, or other significant family events. My wife and I are both deaf, which has affected our relationship with my family over the years. Growing up, my family never really made an effort to understand me or connect with me on a deeper level. They do the basics like feeding me, clothing me, and making small talk. But they didn't try to build any meaningful relationships. They didn't even try to learn sign language to communicate with me better. As a result, I had to learn to read lips and talk just to keep up with them, but I often felt left out because I couldn't fully follow their conversations. They didn't take the time to get to know my wife either, and we've both felt distant from them for as long as I can remember. My family thinks that just because we're deaf, we're not smart enough or capable of doing things for ourselves. They still treat us like little kids, even though we're in our 30s. This has been incredibly frustrating for my wife, who stopped visiting them entirely back in 2017 because of the way they treat us. Despite our challenges with them, we've managed to build successful careers and have been fully independent since we graduated college. We've saved up a good amount of money, enjoy traveling, and are even considering buying a nice house. We're just waiting for the housing market to settle down a bit before making that big move. But even with all of this success, my family still holds on to the belief that my wife's family is somehow taking care of us financially, and that we can't handle things on our own. They don't realize that we handle everything ourselves, from managing our finances to going grocery shopping and paying bills. We're fully capable and have been doing well all on our own, but they can't seem to understand or accept that. It's frustrating and disappointing because we've worked so hard to build a stable and happy life, but my family refuses to see us as intelligent, competent people who have overcome our challenges and done well for ourselves. They just can't seem to look past our disability and recognize us for who we really are, and that hurts. I have an older brother who's not deaf, and he's really close with my family. The problem is that he doesn't have his life together at all. He just works odd jobs, hops from one unstable relationship to another, and is always trying to mooch off others. Despite all of this, my family still treats him like he's got everything figured out. He's a total narcissist and has always looked down on me. But my family lets him get away with it. They continue to praise him and brush off his bad behavior. This is one of the main reasons I keep them all at arm's length. Now, here's the bigger issue. My wife and I have a toddler daughter, and when my wife was pregnant, we decided not to include my family in our daughter's life. They wouldn't respect us as her parents and would treat her poorly if she turned out to be deaf too. We didn't want her to be around people who constantly looked down on her parents, so it seemed like a healthy boundary to set. None of my family members regularly reach out to me anyway, so I didn't see a point in giving them any information about my daughter. We also keep her off social media and limit how much we share about her. I've only visited my family once since she was born, and I left her at home with my wife. A few weeks ago, my brother found out that I have a daughter, and now the whole family is really upset. They blame my wife for keeping my daughter away from them, thinking she somehow controls me, which isn't true at all. They also accused me of denying my daughter a big family that could have helped raise her in different ways. I've started to wonder if they might be right. Maybe my wife and I are being selfish by keeping her away from a family that includes cousins her age. But I also know how my family treats us, and it's hard to imagine them treating my daughter with the love and kindness she deserves. So while I want to believe that a big family could be good for her, I'm not sure it's worth the risk of her being exposed to their disrespectful behavior toward us. Am I the idiot? Now for the top comments. Not the idiot. I think you made the right decision. They don't seem worth keeping in contact with. I'm struggling to understand how they're so dense. They don't realize you're a smart and capable person. So often I think people get the view that deaf people are mentally deficient because they never have any, but they have known you your whole life and still don't get it. Even with the perfect comparison of your brother. Strange. My parents like this with my brother and me. But I'm not deaf. I have autism. They treat me like I'm an idiot who can't do anything while my brother, who messed around all through school and life, is the revered golden child. It's insane. I spent my life trying to get them to like me, but they never will. I had to cut them off, and I've never been happier. OP. Keep your daughter away from people who might hurt her and go no contact correctly this time. Your family is ableist, and they would affect your daughter in a toxic way with it. I'm a little worried from the way you described your family. They treat you and your wife as if you were incapable of discernment and of being legally autonomous. Your tale gives me bad vibes. Now that they know you have a daughter, I would take steps to protect her, like warning the kindergarten, daycare, and in future, the school that they are not allowed to pick up your daughter. That's what I said too. Talking to a lawyer to be prepared if they go the CPS route, and making sure no caretaker will release her to them could be important. Then wanting to raise her differently and thinking Opie and his wife can't take care of themselves is alarming. Their lives would speak for themselves. It would be funny if they did go to court with details of Opie and his wife's incompetence. And then Opie lays out their lives. Then they would look like the fools they are and dash any hopes of any visitation in the future. But I agree. Document everything and ensure all your affairs are in order. Story 2. I was married to my ex-wife for 9 years, but our relationship started way before that. We were childhood sweethearts, and by the time high school was over, we couldn't imagine being apart. So we got married right out of high school and soon had two beautiful children together. It was one of those storybook relationships, at least for a while. Everything seemed to be going well. We were both happy, and I thought life was on track. Eventually, we decided two kids were enough. We didn't want to grow our family any further. We were content, and I even took a big step by getting a vasectomy to make sure that we wouldn't have any more children. Life went on like usual, with the ups and downs that every family faces, but it still felt like a solid, happy home. That was until my wife suddenly told me she was pregnant for the third time. I was stunned and confused because, as far as I knew, I shouldn't have been able to have any more kids after the vasectomy. To make sure everything was right, I went to the doctor to double check, and he confirmed that there was no way I could have fathered that child. I felt the ground shift beneath my feet. My wife finally confessed that she had been having an affair. She told me she didn't want our marriage to end, but I couldn't stay with her after such a betrayal. Trust was shattered, and I made it clear that I wasn't going to raise a child that wasn't mine, especially given the circumstances. We separated, and she moved in with the man she had been seeing, who was the father of her third child. Not long after our divorce was finalized, she got engaged to him and had another child. But, just to be absolutely certain that the third child wasn't mine, I paid for a DNA test, which confirmed that I wasn't the father. I was relieved in some ways, but angry in others, thinking about how she had jeopardized our family. In the aftermath of the divorce, people started pressuring me to step up and help with her two other children, saying that I should be a father figure to them since I was already a dad to her two older kids. I flat out refused, saying there was no way I'd take on that role. Her two younger children weren't my responsibility. I knew that I would never turn my back on my own kids, and I remained dedicated to our two older children, but I felt no obligation to her other children. My ex-wife struggled financially after the other man left her with nothing. She only had her mom and sister to rely on. Despite the situation, she repeatedly pleaded with me over the next few years to be more involved in the lives of her two younger kids because they didn't have any active male role models around. I understand her reasoning. She wanted them to have a positive presence in their lives, but I was firm in my refusal. It wasn't my role to be that person for them. My focus was solely on our two older children, making sure they had all the love, support, and attention they needed from their father. I know it's tough for her, and it's probably not what she imagined, but that's not my fault. Our paths diverged after her infidelity, and while I hope she finds stability and support for her children, it's not something I'm going to provide. My priority is to always be there for my kids, the two I had with her, and ensure they have everything they need to grow up happy and well-rounded. I try not to dwell too much on those kids unless I absolutely have to. Like, when I know I'll be around them and want to make sure I don't come across as a jerk. After all, they're my boys' siblings. The older of the two is having a birthday soon, and my ex-wife asked if I could pitch in with some gifts and show up at the party to make the day special. But I said no. I felt it was my ex's job to take care of that. Now her mom and sister are on my case, saying I'm not being a good role model for my boys and that I should show them what a real man and father are like. They argue that I'm damaging my boys by not showing them how to be compassionate and loving toward their half-siblings. They also say I'm causing a divide by allowing my boys to call them half-siblings instead of just siblings. They believe the two younger kids have very little compared to my boys, who are growing up with more stuff, better family quality time, and great experiences. And they're worried this will become more obvious as the older of the two gets to the age where they'll start noticing these things more. But I'm not convinced that this is my responsibility, so I push back. My ex caught wind of this argument with her mom and sister and called me an idiot for punishing our kids instead of her. Honestly, it's tough to hear those criticisms, but I firmly believe that I'm doing what's best for my own children. I'm not going to let my ex's family guilt trip me into a role I don't want or feel is fair. My priority will always be the two kids we had together, and I want to make sure they grow up knowing that their dad has their back. Am I the idiot? Now for the top comments, not the idiot. She was unfaithful and now expects you to pick up the pieces. That's comical. Look after your biological sons and yourself. She got herself into this mess, no one else. Once your kids are older, you can explain what happened and why things seem different for their siblings. But for now, you're a great father to your kids. Why are they punishing the man taking care of his kids instead of the one who bails? They should invest their energy in hounding the kid's actual father for child support. But no, let's try to take advantage of the guy she betrayed. What is it with cheaters wanting everyone to play happy families with their affair? Kids? Talk about having your cake and eating it too. The money you spend on kids that aren't yours is money you can't spend on your kids. This sucks for the two younger kids who've done nothing wrong, but that's something their mother should have considered before cheating on you. Story 3. My husband and I are super excited because we're expecting our first baby. We're planning to move back to my home country after the birth because it's just way cheaper there to raise a child. But in the meantime, I know this means my mother-in-law won't be able to see her son and future grandchild as much once we leave. So, to make sure she doesn't feel too left out, I've tried to include her in this special time. I let her come to our doctor appointments, see the ultrasound photos, and even be part of other big pregnancy milestones like shopping for baby clothes and decorating the nursery. One day, she asked when she could throw us a gender reveal party. Now, where I'm from, gender reveals aren't really a thing. Plus, if I'm honest, the whole idea makes me uncomfortable, especially because some of my husband's family members are kind of weirdly obsessed with the idea of having boys over girls. So, I told her that I really appreciated her offer, but I would prefer not to have one. I suggested that instead, she could organize a bigger baby shower if she wanted to. She didn't really understand my perspective, but she didn't push back too hard at first, so I thought she was okay with it. Last Thursday, we went to a doctor's appointment together since my husband was at work. Everything was going fine until the doctor asked if I wanted to know the baby's gender. I said yes, but before the doctor could answer, my mother-in-law interrupted and asked the doctor to put the result in an envelope so she could give it to the person planning the gender reveal party. I was a little taken aback, but calmly said, no, and asked the doctor to just tell us then and there. My mother-in-law started getting really impatient and insisted that it wouldn't be a big deal to let her have this one thing. I reminded her that we could still have a bigger baby shower instead, but I didn't want to do a gender reveal. Despite my efforts to be kind but firm, she stormed out of the appointment in tears. Later, my husband called me to ask what had happened because his mom had called him crying, saying I'd been horrible to her. I explained everything to him, and he said he understood and wasn't a fan of gender reveals either. However, he still thought we should consider just going along with it since his mom was so upset. The whole idea of doing the whole ballerina or trunk strap reveal makes me feel so uncomfortable. It's supposed to be a special moment for us, and it doesn't feel right to do something we're not comfortable with just because she's sad. But I keep reminding myself that we're going to be leaving soon anyway. Once we're in my home country, she won't have much say in how we handle these things. I'm trying to focus on the fact that everything will eventually work out, even if it's a little tough now. So am I the idiot for refusing a gender reveal? Now for the comments. Not very. The doctor asked you if you wanted to know the gender of the baby as the mother. That's your damn decision. Mother-in-law combined her damn business, and your husband is gutless, wanting to play along with her. You should be standing up for you and telling his mommy to mind her business. Your mother-in-law is being way manipulative. Stick to your no. Being pregnant looks uncomfortable enough without adding unnecessary discomfort. If she keeps it up, try crying and asking why she's so mean. 4 bonus points burst into an ugly, crying, sobbing fit. Next time she brings it up in front of other people, this will make you as bad as her, but it may be worth it. Yes. Use those pregnancy hormones to your advantage. Ugly cry and ask her why she's so mean to a pregnant lady. Don't you know stress is bad for the baby? Why do you want to hurt your grandchild by stressing me out while they are inside me? And make sure hubby has a front seat so we can see just what a manipulative idiot mommy's is being. Story 4. So, it was my nephew's birthday, and the whole family had decided to celebrate with a dinner at the Outback Steakhouse. This restaurant is known for its steaks and other hearty dishes. My daughter, who has autism, was coming along with us, and I knew she had a lot of sensitivities to different foods. Some foods upset her stomach, while others she just doesn't like. Because of this, she's super picky about what she eats. A few days before the dinner, I looked up the restaurant's menu online to see what they offered. I wanted to find something my daughter could eat so she wouldn't feel left out. I asked her if there was anything she would like from the menu, but she checked too and couldn't find a single thing that suited her. She then asked if she could just bring her own food instead. I thought that was a reasonable idea, so I told her she could, but asked her to keep it simple so it wouldn't cause a scene. She agreed and said she would make herself a sandwich with hummus and pesto and bring along some apple slices as a snack. The day of the dinner, we all got dressed up and headed out to the restaurant. Before leaving, I packed her sandwich and apples into some Ziploc bags and put them in my purse. When we arrived at the restaurant, the waiter showed us to our table, and we all started off by ordering drinks. I ordered a Coke because I was in the mood for something fizzy, and my daughter ordered an Arnold Palmer. If you haven't heard of it before, it's a mix of iced tea and lemonade, and it's her favorite drink. When it was time to order our meals, I decided to get a steakhouse salad for myself because I love their salads. I also asked the waiter if he could bring an extra empty plate for me. When he asked my daughter what she wanted to eat, she politely and quietly declined to order anything, just shaking her head. She was so calm about it that nobody at the table seemed to notice she wasn't ordering any food. Soon after, our meals came out and everyone was digging in. I quickly took my daughter's sandwich and apple slices out of my purse, put them on the extra plate I had asked for, and slid it over to her. She ate from the restaurant's plate, so it blended in perfectly, and it was hardly noticeable that she wasn't eating the same food as the rest of us. However, my sister noticed what I was doing and got really mad. She felt like I should have made my daughter try the restaurant's food like everyone else. She whispered to me sharply to order something for my daughter instead of letting her eat her own food. I calmly replied that my daughter was fine with what she had and didn't need anything else. My sister didn't like that answer and got even louder, drawing the attention of everyone at the table. The other people eating nearby started looking over at us too, which made the whole situation pretty embarrassing. I tried to stay calm and keep my sister from making a scene, but she went on about how it was rude to bring outside food to a restaurant. I explained that it wasn't about being rude, but that my daughter just couldn't eat anything on the menu because of her food sensitivities. Despite my explanation, my sister continued arguing, so I just turned back to my daughter and made sure she was okay. We quietly ate our food while the others were still giving us awkward looks. Eventually, the rest of the family tried to steer the conversation back to celebrating my nephew's birthday, and things finally settled down. But for the rest of the meal, I could feel my sister's frustration simmering across the table. We all finished eating, had dessert, and then said our goodbyes. Although the dinner was a little awkward, at least my daughter was happy with her meal and didn't have any stomach issues afterward. When my sister started raising her voice and drawing everyone's attention to our table, I tried to change the topic and lighten the mood. I asked my brother-in-law's mom about her garden because she's always so passionate about her plants and flowers. I thought maybe talking about something pleasant would calm things down, but my sister only got louder. She told me to stop causing a scene and insisted that this was her son's special day, not my daughter's. She was upset that my daughter was eating her own food instead of ordering from the menu. My sister said I needed to stop acting like the world revolved around my daughter and that she wasn't going to let my daughter steal the spotlight on her son's big day. Her face turned beet red as she continued to rant, and her volume was so high that a waitress came over and asked us to keep it down because we were disturbing the other tables around us. Feeling embarrassed and realizing things weren't going to calm down anytime soon, I decided to collect my daughter and quietly leave the restaurant. After we left, my phone buzzed repeatedly with notifications. My sister had sent me several text messages full of harsh words, along with a Venmo request for $50. She insisted I should pay her because of the trouble I'd caused and because I hadn't ordered enough food. I hadn't even eaten much of my salad, and with only 2 soft drinks, I knew our bill couldn't have been $50. Still, I wanted to smooth things over a little, so I sent her $20. But that wasn't enough to satisfy her, and she was still mad as heck. Later on, my brother reached out and tried to explain the situation from my sister's point of view. He told me that she was tired of the attention my daughter always seemed to get, and felt like there was always something happening with her. While he acknowledged that my sister had overreacted at the dinner, he thought that I had been the one to stir things up by bringing my daughter along. According to him, I should have just left her at home if she couldn't handle being in a restaurant. But, from my perspective, my daughter had done just fine at the restaurant. She hadn't made a scene or drawn attention to herself at all. She was eating her sandwich calmly and quietly, just like we had planned. She hadn't needed anything from the menu, and her bringing her own food should have been perfectly okay. So why couldn't everyone just eat their food and ignore my daughters? Now for the comments, not the idiot. It wasn't a scene until your sister made a scene and she sounds unhinged. You literally did nothing wrong or anything to steal the spotlight from your nephew. Your sister did that all on her own. You and your daughter found an unobtrusive way for her to be involved in a family outing. Kudos to you for that. If the restaurant didn't have an issue with you bringing outside food, I don't understand your sister's reaction. Wow. Just wow, Mom. Kudos to you for handling this in a great way. Your sister, on the other hand, well, it wasn't about her son. It was about herself and control putting on a show for everyone else. Not sure how old your daughter and nephew are, but neither need to be exposed to this toxicity at any age. Everyone's the idea here. I'm wondering if we're missing some info. That's a way over-the-top reaction to something. Does nephew get overshadowed? Other family gatherings? Was your invite a pressure invite from your family to your parents, spent equal time on both kids? Opie may not even know that it's happening. Your parents may be unintentionally doing this, and it's easier for your sister to blame you. It's worth a calm and grown-up discussion about why she lost her. Story 5, entitled Seal Wants Custody of My Baby, so my sister-in-law has been admitted to a psychiatric facility. In the comments of my previous post, I mentioned that her husband was seeking out counseling for them to deal with the infertility prior to this incident. After the incident, he sought out a psychiatrist rather than a counselor, and they had their first session last week. I didn't get the specifics of what happened, But basically, she made some statements that the psychiatrist felt indicated she was a danger to others, my baby and me, and she was placed under an involuntary hold. My BIL has been nothing but apologetic through this entire ordeal, and he kept her away from us since the incident. Mael was staying with them to keep an eye on CL. She tried to leave the house in the middle of the night to see her baby. Also, BIL found her researching how to induce lactation, and she said it was to make sure she can feed the baby properly when I come to my senses and give her up. From what BIL has said, seeing me breastfeed is apparently what triggered the entire episode. It was the first time Sayel was around the baby for any length of time, and she was holding her when she got fussy because she was hungry. Naturally, I took her to feed her, and this made SEL feel inadequate because it triggered the thought that she would never be able to do that, which led to the events of the last post. I'm grateful for all the advice that was offered on my last post, as some of it was really helpful. We won't be moving as it's not feasible for us at the moment, but we have taken extra steps with security both at home and at the kids' school, daycare. This whole thing is taking a toll on the family, but MIL, Phil, and BL are taking care of Sayal, and my husband and I are focused on ensuring the safety of our immediate family and minimizing the effect on the kids as much as we can. Story 6. We're in Tokyo. Nobody cares about your little graduation dinner. My sister texted. My cousin added, enjoy eating alone, loser. So I pulled every dollar I'd been funding their lives with and watched everything collapse. Sup, Reddit. My family ditched my college graduation dinner to go to Tokyo, then sent me mocking texts about eating alone. So I cut off the money pipeline I'd been funding their lives with for years. What followed was absolute chaos. Buckle up because this gets messy. I'm Kyle, 28 male, and I just finished my MBA from a solid state university. Took me 6 years because I was working full-time while going to school part-time, but I finally did it. GPA of 3.7, zero student debt because I paid as I went, and a promotion waiting for me at the logistics firm where I'd been grinding since I was 22. Not gonna lie, I was proud. Spent 6 years juggling 60-hour work weeks with night classes and weekend study sessions. Missed birthdays, holidays, pretty much every social event you can think of. My friends stopped inviting me places because I was always either at work or in class or studying, but I kept my head down and pushed through because I had goals. The degree was supposed to open doors. My company had already promised me a senior analyst position once I graduated, complete with a 20% raise and actual decision-making authority, instead of just running reports for people who barely understood the data I was giving them. My family knew how hard I'd worked for this. They'd watched me spend my 20s living in a cramped studio apartment, driving a car with 200,000 miles on it, eating meal prep chicken and rice 6 days a week, because that's all I could afford while paying tuition out of pocket. When I told them I was graduating in May, I started planning a small celebration dinner. Nothing fancy, just family at a nice restaurant. I made reservations 2 months in advance at this Italian place downtown that had good reviews. Called everyone, got confirmations, even put down a deposit for a private room since there would be about 15 people. My parents, my 2 sisters, my aunt and uncle, 3 cousins, my grandmother. The people who'd supposedly been supporting me through this whole journey. The ones who'd tell people at family gatherings how proud they were that I was bettering myself and making something of my life. 2 weeks before graduation, my sister Natalie, 26 female, mentioned she might not make it. She had this opportunity to go to Japan with her boyfriend, some last-minute trip he'd planned. I reminded her the graduation dinner had been scheduled for months, and she rolled her eyes and said she'd try to work it out. Natalie's always been the golden child who could do no wrong. Dropped out of community college after 1 semester, bounced between retail jobs and server positions, never held anything longer than 8 months. But according to my parents, she was finding herself and exploring her options, while I was just being too rigid with my life choices. Her boyfriend Trevor was one of those guys who talks about starting businesses, but never actually does anything. Claimed he was an entrepreneur, but as far as I could tell, his main business was spending other people's money while posting motivational quotes on social media. My parents loved him though, said he had vision and drive. A week before graduation, my cousin Blake, 29 male, texted asking if he could bring his new girlfriend to the dinner. I said sure, already paid for extra seats anyway. He responded with, cool, but actually we might not come. Depends on what's going on that weekend. Blake's the family party guy. Never finished college, works as a bartender at some club downtown, lives with his parents rent-free at 29 because he's saving up for something he never specifies. Shows up to family events with a different girl every time, always talking about how he's networking and building connections, when really he's just going out every night and sleeping until 3 p.m. 3 days before graduation, my other sister Melissa, 24 female, called. She wasn't going to make it either. Her roommate was having a crisis and needed her support. When I asked what kind of crisis, she got vague and defensive. Said I was being selfish by expecting her to drop everything for a dinner when her friend really needed her right now. Melissa's whole personality is being there for everyone except the people who've actually been there for her. She'll cancel family plans to help some friend she met 3 weeks ago move apartments. But when I needed help moving after working a 12-hour shift, she was too busy. According to her, I'm just not as emotionally available as her other relationships. The night before graduation, I got a group text from Natalie. Hey everyone, quick update. We're in Tokyo. Trevor surprised me with tickets and we couldn't pass it up. Trip of a lifetime. Sorry about tomorrow, but you understand. Have fun at your little dinner thing. Attached was a photo. The whole family. All of them. Standing in front of the famous Shibuya crossing like they were filming a tourism commercial. My parents, both sisters, Blake, his new girlfriend, my aunt and uncle, even my grandmother who claimed she had a doctor's appointment and couldn't travel. 15 people who'd confirmed they'd be at my graduation dinner were instead posing in matching berets and scarves in front of French landmarks. They'd planned an entire international trip, coordinated schedules, bought plane tickets, booked hotels, and managed to keep it secret from me for weeks. The caption on the photo? Finally together. Family first. My phone started blowing up with texts from the group chat. Blake added, "Enjoy eating alone, loser. This is what real success looks like." Natalie chimed in, "We're in Tokyo. Nobody cares about your little graduation dinner. Grow up." My mom sent a separate text. "Don't be dramatic. We'll celebrate when we get back. You understand that opportunities like this don't come around often." I sat there staring at my phone for probably 20 minutes. Didn't cry, didn't rage, just processed what was happening. These people who'd spent years telling me how proud they were, who'd bragged about me to their friends, who'd supposedly supported my educational journey, had collectively decided that a vacation was more important than showing up for me. The dinner was the next day at 6 p.m. I'd paid a $500 deposit for the private room. The reservation was for 15 people. I called the restaurant and canceled everything. Lost the deposit, but whatever. Then I spent graduation day exactly how I spent most of my 20s. Working. Had a project deadline coming up, and sitting around feeling sorry for myself wasn't going to hit those targets. My manager found out what happened when he asked why I looked miserable after walking across the stage that morning. I told him my family was in Tokyo instead of at my graduation dinner. He took me out for steaks that night, told me his family had pulled similar stuff, and gave me some advice that stuck with me. Family's supposed to show up. When they don't, you remember it. And when they need something from you later, you remember it then too. The thing is, I'd been doing more than just working hard and going to school. I'd also been bankrolling my family's lifestyle for the past 4 years. And they had no idea how much. See, I'm good with money. Always have been. While everyone else was spending their paychecks on whatever they wanted, I was running spreadsheets and building budgets and tracking every dollar. When I started making decent money at the logistics firm, I got smart about investing, building an emergency fund, and creating passive income streams. By the time I was 25, I was pulling in about $90,000 a year between my salary and side investments. Not rich, but comfortable enough that when family asked for help, I usually said yes. Started small. My parents needed help with property taxes one year. $1,500. They'd pay me back once Dad's commission check came through. Never did, but whatever. Family helps family, right? Then Natalie's car broke down. Needed a new transmission. $2,800. She promised to pay me back in installments. Made one payment of $200, then stopped responding when I asked about the rest. Melissa needed help with rent during a rough patch between jobs. 6 months of rent payments at $900 per month. She was supposed to pay me back once she got stable. That was 2 years ago. Still waiting. Blake's car got repossessed because he stopped making payments. I loaned him $3,500 to get it back. He told everyone I'd helped him out, but never mentioned the loan part. When I brought it up at Christmas, he acted like I was being petty about money between family. My parents' air conditioner died during a heat wave. I paid for a new HVAC system, $5,500. Dad said he'd pay me back in monthly installments. Made 2 payments, then told me he was restructuring his finances and would resume payments once things stabilized. That was 18 months ago. The pattern was clear. They'd ask for help, I'd provide it, they'd promise to pay me back, then act like I was the jerk for expecting repayment. And because I was making good money and living below my means, they assumed I didn't need it back. But I'd been keeping records. Every loan, every payment, every promise. Had it all documented in a spreadsheet with dates, amounts, and terms. Not because I was planning anything, just because that's how I operate. Track everything. Trust the data. Sitting in my apartment the night of my graduation, eating leftover Chinese food, and looking at photos of my family in Tokyo, I pulled up that spreadsheet. Wanted to see exactly how much I'd funded their lives while they couldn't be bothered to show up for mine. The number was staggering. Over 4 years, I'd loaned or given my family $48,000. Some of it was official loans with promises of repayment. Some was gifts that I'd been guilted into not expecting back. Some was me covering expenses they couldn't handle because their financial planning sucked. My parents owed me $12,000. Natalie owed me $8,000. Melissa owed me $6,000. Blake owed me $5,000. My aunt and uncle had borrowed $4,000 for their daughter's wedding and never paid it back. Even my grandmother owed me $1,500 from when she needed help with medical bills. $48,000. That's what it cost to be the responsible one. The one with the job and the savings and the good credit. The one who could be counted on when everyone else screwed up. The Bank of Kyle, always open. Apparently never expecting any returns. And where was that money now? Paying for their Tokyo vacation while I ate cold noodles alone in my apartment. The rage that hit me wasn't explosive. It was cold and calculating. Started thinking about exactly how much of their current lifestyle depended on me continuing to be the family ATM. Natalie's car that I'd fixed? She couldn't afford the insurance without my help. Had been covering her premiums for 8 months because she claimed the payments were too high after her boyfriend lost his job. $270 a month going to keep her insured on a car I'd already paid to repair. My parents' house? They'd refinanced twice and were underwater on the mortgage. I'd been covering their property tax payments for 2 years because they couldn't afford both the mortgage and the taxes. $2,400 a year so they wouldn't lose their house. Melissa's apartment? I was guarantor on her lease because she had terrible credit from unpaid credit card bills. She'd already missed rent twice this year, and the landlord had called me both times. I'd paid it to avoid getting my credit screwed because my name was on the paperwork. Blake's car insurance? Canceled after a DUI last year. Couldn't get coverage anywhere affordable. I'd added him to my policy as an occasional driver and been covering the difference. $140 a month to keep him legal. My aunt and uncle's daughter was in college. Private school, crazy expensive. They'd borrowed money from me for her first semester and never paid it back. Then had the audacity to ask if I'd help with her second year. I'd said no, but they'd gotten my parents to guilt trip me into investing in family education. Ended up covering $3,500 in tuition. I'd been so focused on being the responsible one, the reliable one, the one who could be counted on, that I'd become the one who got used. And they knew it. They knew exactly what they were doing. The group chat from Tokyo kept buzzing all weekend. Photos of them at temples, restaurants, street markets. Natalie posted a picture of her and Trevor at a traditional tea ceremony with a caption about living our best lives. Blake posted a video of everyone doing a toast at some fancy restaurant with the caption, "Family Goals." Not one person asked how graduation went. Not one person apologized for missing it. Not one person acknowledged that maybe, just maybe, planning a family vacation on the same weekend as my graduation dinner was kind of messed up. Sunday night, my mom sent me a text. "Hope you had a nice weekend. We'll do something for your graduation when we get back. Love you." Like she was doing me a favor. Like showing up a month late with some gas station flowers would make up for the coordinated abandonment. That's when I made my decision. I wasn't going to yell or argue or make a scene. I was just going to stop. Stop being the bank. Stop being the safety net. Stop funding their lives while they treated me like an afterthought. Monday morning, I called my insurance company and removed Blake from my policy. The agent asked if I was sure, and I said absolutely. He'd need to find his own coverage by the end of the month. Then I called Natalie's insurance company and canceled the payment method. She'd get a notice that her policy was about to lapse. Could set up her own payments if she wanted to keep coverage. Called my parents' mortgage company and removed my authorization to make tax payments on their behalf. They'd need to handle it themselves going forward. Contacted Melissa's landlord and requested my name be removed as guarantor. There was a process for that, but I started the paperwork. She'd need to qualify on her own or find a new guarantor. Then I sent a single text to the family group chat. Effective immediately, I'm no longer providing financial assistance to anyone. All outstanding loans are due within 30 days. After that, I'll be pursuing collections. Thanks for the Tokyo photos. Looked like fun. Turned my phone off and went to work. Had reports to run and analysis to complete. The promotion was official now, and I had responsibilities. Didn't turn my phone back on until Wednesday. When I did, there were 83 missed calls and over 200 text messages. The messages were a journey. Started with confusion, moved to anger, landed on panic, then circled back to guilt tripping. Blake. Dude, what's going on? You can't just kick me off your insurance? I'll get arrested if I'm driving uninsured. Natalie. You're seriously canceling my insurance? Over a vacation? You're psychotic. My mom. We need to talk about this immediately. You're making rash decisions over hurt feelings. Melissa. The landlord called me about the guarantor thing. You're really going to screw me over? Where am I supposed to live? My dad. This is unacceptable. We're family. You don't just cut off family because you're upset about one thing. My aunt. Very disappointed in you. Family supports each other through thick and thin. The entitlement was breathtaking. Not one apology, not one acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just immediate outrage that I'd stopped funding their lives. My mom called 17 times. I didn't answer. She left voicemails that started calm and progressively got more frantic. The last one was her crying about how I was destroying the family and being selfish and throwing away relationships over money. Threw away relationships over money. They'd thrown away my graduation over a vacation, but somehow I was the one destroying relationships. Wednesday night, my parents showed up at my apartment. They'd just gotten back from Tokyo, and instead of unpacking or resting, they came straight to my place to confront me. My dad hammered on the door like he was trying to break it down. I let them in because I knew they weren't leaving until we talked. What's this about? Dad demanded, not even bothering with hello. You can't just cut everyone off like this. I didn't cut anyone off, I said calmly. I stopped subsidizing your lives. There's a difference. We're family, my mom said. Family helps each other. Exactly, I replied. Family helps each other. So where was my family on Saturday? They both got quiet for a second. Then Dad started in about how the Tokyo trip was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that they couldn't pass up. Trevor had gotten some kind of deal on tickets and hotels, and everyone had contributed to make it happen. It was spontaneous and exciting, and they thought I'd understand. You knew about my graduation for 6 months, I said. You confirmed you'd be at the dinner. Then you planned a vacation for the exact same weekend and didn't tell me until the night before. We didn't want to upset you, my mom explained, like that made it better. We thought it would be easier if we just went and celebrated with you later. How much did Tokyo cost? I asked. They exchanged looks. Dad finally said it was about $2,000 per person for flights, hotels, and expenses. 15 people. $30,000 total spent on a vacation to avoid coming to my graduation dinner. And you're currently 2 years behind on property taxes, I said. The ones I've been paying because you can't afford them, but you can afford a $2,000 trip to Tokyo. That's different, Dad argued. The trip was a one-time thing. The taxes are an ongoing expense. Right, and my ongoing expense has been funding your lifestyle while you treat me like an inconvenience. I showed them the spreadsheet. Every loan, every payment, every broken promise. $48,000 over 4 years. They stared at the numbers like they were seeing them for the first time. Some of those were gifts, my mom protested. You said we didn't have to pay you back. I said that after you guilt-tripped me for asking, I corrected. There's a difference between giving a gift and being told that expecting repayment makes me a bad son. Dad tried the authority approach, said I was being childish and petty, said real men don't keep score in families, said I was letting hurt feelings cloud my judgment. You're right, I agreed. Real men don't keep score. They also don't ditch their son's graduation for a vacation and then act like he's wrong for being upset about it. My mom started crying, said I was tearing the family apart, said money shouldn't come between us, said she raised me better than this. You raised me to be responsible and reliable, I said. That's what I'm being. Responsible with my money, reliable in my boundaries. You just don't like it because I'm not responsible for your problems anymore. They left after an hour of circular arguments. Before walking out, Dad told me I'd regret this decision. That family was more important than money, and someday I'd need them and they wouldn't be there. I told him that was fine. They'd already proven they wouldn't be there anyway. The next week was brutal. Every family member called to tell me I was wrong. My aunt said I was being cruel. My uncle said I was holding grudges. My grandmother called to say she was disappointed in me for valuing money over relationships. Blake showed up at my apartment demanding I reinstate his insurance. When I said no, he tried to intimidate me with his height and build. I reminded him I had cameras and assault charges stick. He left. Natalie sent long text messages about how I'd always been jealous of her and Trevor, How I was bitter because I'd spent my 20s working instead of living. How I was punishing her for being happy. She never once mentioned missing my graduation. Melissa tried the sympathy approach, said she couldn't afford rent without my help and would end up homeless. I suggested she get a roommate or find a cheaper place. She called me heartless. My parents started telling extended family that I'd abandoned them over a misunderstanding about a dinner. Made it sound like I'd overreacted to a simple scheduling conflict. Conveniently left out the part where they'd planned an international vacation to actively avoid my graduation. I let them talk. Didn't defend myself. Didn't explain. The people who mattered knew the truth. 2 weeks after cutting them off, the consequences started hitting. Blake's car got impounded for driving without insurance. Cost him $800 in fees and fines to get it back. He called screaming about how it was my fault. I reminded him he'd had a month to get his own coverage. Natalie's insurance lapsed. She got pulled over for a broken taillight and got cited for no insurance. Had to go to court, pay fines, and provide proof of coverage. She sent me a picture of the ticket with a message. Hope you're happy. My parents got a notice from the county about unpaid property taxes. They'd be facing liens and potential foreclosure proceedings if they didn't pay within 60 days. They called demanding I fix it. I declined. Melissa's landlord refused to renew her lease without a guarantor. She had to move in with friends, splitting rent 3 ways in a 1-bedroom apartment. She posted on social media about how family betrayal had forced her into a terrible living situation. The family group chat turned into a support group for people dealing with the fallout of my boundaries. They'd post about their struggles and blame me. Acted like I'd caused their problems, instead of just stopping to prevent them. My mom posted on social media about difficult family situations and the pain of unconditional love. Got a lot of sympathy comments from people who had no idea what she was talking about. She never mentioned Tokyo or my graduation, just positioned herself as a suffering mother dealing with a difficult child. I blocked most of them on social media. Didn't need to see their version of events. 3 weeks in, my uncle called with a different approach. He wanted to mediate. Thought maybe we could all sit down and talk through this rationally. I agreed to meet him for coffee. He showed up with a printed agenda, had bullet points about family unity and forgiveness, and moving forward. I let him present his whole case. When he finished, I asked him one question. If this was your son's graduation, and your family planned a vacation the same weekend and didn't tell you until the night before, how would you feel? He got quiet. Finally said he'd probably be upset but would try to understand that things happen, and people make mistakes. It wasn't a mistake, I said. It was a choice. They chose to plan a trip, book flights, coordinate schedules, and spend $30,000 to avoid being at my graduation. That's not a mistake. That's a statement about priorities. He tried to argue that maybe they didn't realize the dates conflicted. I pulled up Natalie's text messages from 3 months earlier, where she'd confirmed she'd be at the dinner, and was so proud of me for finishing school. He had no response to that. Here's the thing, I told him. I don't care if they apologize. I don't care if they explain. I'm done being the family bank. They can fund their own lives from now on. He asked about the money they owed me. I said they had 30 days to pay, or I'd pursue collections. He looked shocked that I was serious. You'd really take your own family to court over money? No, I corrected. I'd take people who borrowed money and refused to pay it back to court. The fact that they're related to me just makes their theft more disappointing. We didn't meet again after that. Week 4, my mom called from a different number. I answered because I didn't recognize it. She begged me to help with the property taxes. They'd tried to set up a payment plan with the county, but were denied because of previous late payments. They needed $9,000 by the end of the month, or they'd start foreclosure proceedings. We'll lose the house, she pleaded. Where are we supposed to go? I don't know, I said honestly. But it's not my problem to solve anymore. How can you be so cold? How could you miss my graduation for a vacation? She didn't have an answer. Just kept crying about the house and how I was letting them become homeless over pride. I'm not letting you do anything, I said. You made choices. You chose Tokyo over my graduation. You chose to spend $2,000 per person on a vacation instead of prioritizing your property taxes. You chose to borrow money from me and never pay it back. These are all your choices. I'm just no longer shielding you from the consequences. She hung up. My dad called an hour later. Different approach. He was sorry. They shouldn't have missed my graduation. It was wrong, and he understood why I was upset. Could we please work something out? They'd pay me back, set up a real payment plan this time, whatever I needed. Just please help them save the house. How much of the Tokyo trip can you get refunded? I asked. What? The Tokyo trip. How much can you get back? Hotels, tours, any prepaid expenses? We can't get refunds. Everything's already been used. Right. So you spent $30,000 on a vacation and can't get any of it back. But you want me to give you $9,000 to save your house. We'll pay you back. Like you paid back the other $12,000 you owe me? He got quiet, then tried anger. Said I was being vindictive and punishing them for one mistake. Said real family forgives. Real family shows up? I said. You didn't. Now deal with it. I hung up and blocked his new number too. Week 5, things got nasty. Blake posted on social media about how I'd abandoned the family in their time of need. Made it sound like they were facing some tragedy and I'd refused to help. Got a lot of supportive comments from people who didn't know the real story. Several mutual friends reached out asking if I was okay and what was going on. I didn't explain. Just said I'd set boundaries with family, and some people weren't happy about it. Let them think what they wanted. Natalie started a campaign to paint me as the villain, posted vague things about toxic family members, and people who value money over relationships. Her friends commented with support. She never mentioned the graduation or Tokyo, just positioned herself as the victim of my cruelty. My parents' friends from church started calling me. They'd heard the family was going through difficulties and wanted to offer support. I politely declined and said I was no longer involved in their financial situation. One of them, an older woman named Patricia, was more direct. Asked me point blank what was happening. I told her the abbreviated version. They'd missed my graduation for a vacation, I'd stopped funding their lifestyle, now they were facing consequences. She was quiet for a long minute, then said, "That seems fair. They made their choice." Turned out Patricia's son had gone through something similar. His family had missed his wedding for a golf trip. He'd cut them off financially, and she'd supported his decision. She promised not to share the details with anyone, but said she thought I was doing the right thing. It was the first time any adult had validated my decision. Week 6, the collection notices started going out. I'd warned them, 30 days to pay, or I'd pursue collections. 30 days came and went with zero payment from anyone, so I filed. Small claims court for amounts under $10,000. Regular civil court for my parents' larger debt. Sent the paperwork certified mail so they couldn't claim they didn't receive it. Had all my documentation ready, loan agreements, text messages confirming amounts owed, payment records showing I'd been covering their expenses. The outrage was nuclear. My entire extended family got involved. Called me heartless, cruel, vindictive. Said I was destroying the family over money. Said they couldn't believe I'd actually take my own parents to court. I reminded them that my parents had borrowed $12,000 and refused to pay it back. That was theft, not a family disagreement. Blake threatened to teach me a lesson about family loyalty. I forwarded his threatening text to the police and filed a report. He got a visit from officers telling him to leave me alone. Natalie called me sobbing, begging me to drop the lawsuits. Said this would ruin their credit and make it impossible to recover financially. I pointed out that not paying back money you borrowed ruins your credit anyway. The lawsuit was just making it official. My mom left a voicemail saying I was dead to her, that she had no son, that she'd never forgive me for this betrayal. I saved the voicemail. Might need it later. The court dates got scheduled. 3 separate hearings across 2 months. My parents tried to get a lawyer but couldn't afford one. They'd have to represent themselves. Meanwhile, I hired an attorney. Cost me $4,000, but I wanted this done right. She reviewed all my documentation and said I had an airtight case. They'd borrowed money, signed agreements, even informal text agreements counted, and refused to pay. Basic contract law. Week 8, my parents lost their house. The county foreclosure went through. They had to be out in 30 days. They moved in with my aunt and uncle. 5 people in a 3-bedroom house. My aunt's Facebook posts got passive-aggressive about unexpected guests and sacrifices for family. Natalie moved back in with them too after her boyfriend dumped her. Apparently Trevor's spontaneous Tokyo trip had been funded by credit cards he couldn't pay off. He'd been fired from his job for missing too much work because he was in Tokyo. The relationship imploded under financial stress. So now there were 6 adults crammed into my aunt's house, all blaming me for their situation. Melissa lost her apartment and moved in with a friend, sleeping on a couch. Posted sad photos on Instagram about her minimalist lifestyle and learning to appreciate small spaces. Her followers ate it up, not knowing she was there because she couldn't afford rent. Blake was living in his car after getting evicted for unpaid rent. He'd been spending his money on going out instead of rent, assuming I'd bail him out like always. When I didn't, his landlord followed through on eviction. He posted pictures of sunrises from his car, with captions about freedom and unconventional living. The family implosion was complete, and it had only taken 8 weeks without my financial support. Week 10, the first court date arrived. My parents showed up looking defeated, wearing clothes that hadn't been ironed, driving my aunt's car because theirs had been repossessed. The judge reviewed my documentation. I had everything: loan agreements via text message, bank records showing I'd transferred money, messages where they'd promised to pay me back, records of me asking for payment, and them refusing or ignoring me. My dad tried to argue that family loans were different from regular loans, that there was an understanding of flexibility and grace periods. The judge asked if they'd made any effort to pay me back. My dad admitted they hadn't. So you borrowed $12,000, promised to repay it, made zero payments, and you're arguing that you shouldn't have to pay because you're related to the plaintiff? It's more complicated than that, my dad said weakly. It's actually very simple, the judge replied. You borrowed money. You didn't pay it back. That's the definition of debt. Judgment in my favor. $12,000 plus court costs and interest. My parents had 30 days to pay, or I could pursue wage garnishment. They didn't say a word to me as they left the courthouse. The second hearing for Natalie went the same way. She tried to claim the car repairs were a gift. I showed text messages where she'd explicitly said, "I'll pay you back in installments." Judgment for $8,000 plus costs. Blake's hearing was almost funny. He showed up unprepared, tried to charm the judge with stories about family dynamics and misunderstandings. The judge was not charmed. Judgment for $5,000 plus costs. Melissa didn't show up to her hearing. Automatic judgment in my favor for $6,000 plus costs. Total judgments, $31,000. Still less than they actually owed me, but it was what I could prove in court. The wage garnishments started within weeks. My dad's commission checks got garnished. Natalie's paychecks got garnished. Blake's bar wages got garnished. Even Melissa's income got garnished once she started working again. They'd be paying me back for years. The family fractured completely. Half blamed me for being heartless. Half quietly admitted I'd been taken advantage of. Nobody talked to anybody else without it turning into arguments about whose fault this was. Christmas came and went. I wasn't invited to anything. Spent it with friends instead, ate good food, exchanged gifts with people who actually valued me. Best Christmas I'd had in years. My promotion came through at work. Senior analyst position, 20% raise, actual authority. Used part of the raise to buy myself a new car. Nothing fancy, just reliable transportation that wasn't held together with duct tape and hope. Opened a savings account just for the garnished wages. Every month, money showed up from the court-ordered payments. Watching that balance grow was satisfying in a way I can't fully explain. 6 months after my graduation, I got a letter in the mail. From my grandmother, the only family member who hadn't gotten involved in the mess. She wrote that she was sorry for missing my graduation, that she'd been pressured to go on the Tokyo trip and had felt uncomfortable saying no, that she understood why I'd cut everyone off and didn't blame me, that she hoped someday I'd be willing to talk to her again, but she understood if I wasn't ready. She also included a check for $1,500, the medical bills I'd helped her with, fully repaid with a year of interest. I called her that night. We talked for 2 hours. She told me the truth about Tokyo. It had been planned specifically to avoid my graduation. My mom had convinced everyone that I was too serious about school and needed to learn that life happens, and couldn't expect everyone to revolve around his schedule. The trip was meant to teach me a lesson about not being the center of attention, about understanding that other people's lives and experiences mattered too, about not being so rigid with expectations. They'd literally planned an international vacation as a punishment for expecting my family to show up to my graduation. My grandmother had gone along because she was afraid of being excluded from future events, but she'd felt sick about it the whole time. Said the photos they posted were fake happiness. Everyone had been uncomfortable, but nobody wanted to be the first to admit it. They thought you'd just accept it, she said, like you always did. They didn't think you'd actually walk away. I didn't walk away, I corrected. They pushed me away. I just stopped pushing back. She agreed. Said she was proud of me for setting boundaries. Said she wished she'd taught her daughter to be more like me instead of enabling the behavior that led to this mess. We stayed in touch after that. Met for lunch every few weeks. She was the only family member I maintained contact with. A year after my graduation, my mom sent me a letter. Not an email or text, but an actual handwritten letter. She apologized. Said they'd made a terrible mistake with Tokyo, that they'd been wrong to miss my graduation, that she understood why I'd cut them off and didn't expect forgiveness. She just wanted me to know that she was sorry. She explained that they'd lost everything. The house, the cars, their savings. They were living in a small apartment now. My parents and Natalie splitting a 2-bedroom. My dad was working 2 jobs to make ends meet and pay off the court judgments. Natalie was working retail again. They were barely surviving. She didn't ask for help, just said she hoped someday I'd be willing to talk to them again, that she loved me and always would, even though she'd failed to show it when it mattered. I read the letter 3 times, didn't respond. Sometimes that's the best you can do. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.